and welcome to The Flip Side. I'm Nick Briscoe, and I'm desperately looking around to make sure that I've got all of the record buttons in record, all the cameras are working, it looks like the studio's working. And today I'm joined by Louis Hanshaw, singer-songwriter and musician. Hi, Louis.
Hi, Nick.
Yeah,
no, great to be here. What a cool place you've got. Fingers crossed everything's working. That's good. I think it's good. I think you're good.
Yeah, so yeah, it looks like it is. So, more or less, I met you like maybe 2 weeks ago. We had a couple of like email exchanges, text exchanges, and then you came along here and we had a long chat and decided to come back and film one of our conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And it was yet another time where I've sat and had a conversation with someone and thought, I really wish I'd recorded that. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're a very interesting guy. You got a lot of interesting takes on things. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% up to speed with exactly how you see things.
Yeah.
I don't 100% agree with some of the things that I've heard that you say, but let's say I'm open to having it explained to me. Yeah. And that's what I'm really interested in. So, yeah, I mean, is there a particular topic you want to kick off with?
No, but I just wanted to ask, what's that crystal?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea. Someone gave it to me, and I just really, really, really like it.
It's cool. It's supposed to be there then.
I'll grab it, and I don't know if people can see that. Yeah, maybe someone can tell me. I don't even want to guess, but I just thought it was beautiful. Yeah.
Christina might be able to figure that one out.
So maybe just a little bit about your background and what you're doing here in Andalusia.
Yeah, okay, so I've been in Spain for like about 13 years now.
Yeah.
Spanish is pretty good.
How did you get your Spanish good? Did you work? Were you working and you just had to like trial by fire?
Right. Well, I think originally I did French at school back in the day.
Yeah.
It wasn't really useful at the time for anything. I couldn't talk it, but I did well in the exam. It was like exam French, you know. It wasn't really useful. And I think that there's a lot of similarities in the roots.
Yeah.
But really, I did a lot of podcasts. I studied a lot of podcasts. There was notesinspanish.com was really good.
Yeah.
There's an English guy and a Madrileña woman, and they just had these very conversational, like different levels, you know, but super basic to intermediate and advanced. And I just binged that before I came out to Spain.
Okay.
I was working some sales job that was soul destroying, and in between trying to chat to people on the street, have you got breakdown cover? Yeah. I would be studying Spanish.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really good.
Yeah.
And how did you find Spanish here in Andalusia? Because I mean, I've been so many different places in Spain, and still here where I live, I find it the most difficult to understand. And I even have some friends, like Latin American friends, who are native Latin American Spanish speakers, who've come here and they don't understand some of the people that they're talking to.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
I've had some trial by fire, and we were in the process. Well, we built a couple of houses and worked with a building company, and then some sort of handyman fix it kind of when we had kids in school and meeting their friends' parents, and then their friends' parents would like help us with the handiwork, and I was building a sauna for a couple of weeks here and doing some other work there with this like super Andalusian guy, you know, and I had to really just figure out all the new vocab like martillo, like the hammer and spanner and you know, and I'm like totally out of my depth, but it was really good for my Spanish. It was really good and that was a few years ago now.
I think I'm the same. I think that I probably can tell you the name of every tool and every, you know, like screw and, you know, all the rest of that kind of stuff. But other stuff I'm not so clued up on. Yeah.
So I came over originally with the idea of maybe being an estate agent and thinking that I'd be selling villas and stuff like that. And it was just after 2008. It was like 2010, 2009, 2010. So the bottom had completely fallen out of the market, and just everyone was feeling like, what was the first thing you do? You don't buy a holiday home.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. And it was just, but I spent a lot of time in a shop, and it was in Torrox Costa, and there's a lot of Germans in Torrox Costa. So I had to dig a lot of my German out as well. So I had a lot of passive German, but I had to then dig it out and make it more active and talk German as well. Yeah. So I'm kind of trilingual, almost four, a bit of French, because we spent some time in France over the summer.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I somehow just picked these things up over the years with just time and interest. Yeah. Because it's not a usual English thing, is it, really? Yeah. Multiple languages. No. But it's very useful here. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
So what are the four? English, Spanish,
German,
and French.
And French, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I understand a bit of Finnish as well, because my wife's Finnish.
Okay, wow. Okay.
So, because she's always spoke to the kids in Finnish.
That is... Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Yeah. Okay. Do you know Richard and Henna?
Yes.
Okay, there you go, because that's an English guy with... Well, English Iranian guy with a Finnish wife, yeah? Yeah. Okay. That's a coincidence, yeah.
Well, we met them when they were doing street demonstrations, protests, against the masks, when that all came out. Yeah. And it was my wife's stepmother in the Canary Islands. She'd seen on Facebook, there's a Finnish girl and she's protesting and it's in Fuengirola or whatever. Yeah. And we took the kids out and went and said hello and met them. Okay. And we met them a few times. So
Richard's one of the remixers that I know.
No.
Yeah. He's actually, I mean, I'm hoping that I'm going to be talking to him soon. I'm going to do an interview with him soon. So I kind of don't want to say too much, because I want him to explain things himself. Mm-hmm. But I think he kind of recreated himself. He was a producer. Mm-hmm. He was a sound engineer and a producer. He's also a very good musician. I'm not sure how much songwriting he's done. I think he's done quite a lot. But a lot of let's say. Actually, I'm not 100% sure. From what I can remember, he'd done quite a few collaborations on dance music stuff. Okay. And he was quite a well-known mixer and remixer, and he completely got out of the music industry. And I think he's dipped his toe back into it over the last year or so. Okay. I mean, he's the guy who helped me with my M1.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, he got one, and he told me, he reassured me that it was a step worth taking, that it wasn't just hype, that it really was a game changer. Yeah. So, yeah, good guy. Okay. Yeah, really good guy. So, okay, so you're in Andalusia. It's like, what did you say, 2008? There's a crash?
It was just, yes, it was more like 2009, 2010. Yeah. And the kind of illusions of grandeur that I was going to be rolling around showing these large villas, making massive commissions and stuff like that, it just didn't materialise. It was like a no. I ended up working in a computer shop, so it was. I've got a reasonably techie background. Yeah, I used to work at one of the first internet service providers in England.
I'm going to move that a little bit closer to you. You sit comfortably. I'm just going to check you're on camera. Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah. So I got a really good sort of foundational technical education. Yeah. How the internet works. Yeah. Not like programming routers and stuff, but a very good, solid how the internet works, and being in that community of everyone that worked there, we all sort of got the internet and all the new stuff that was coming out, and this was like in the 2000s.
When you say how the internet works, are you talking about the technology that is behind it, or the methodology, what it was used for? or what it, or its, let's say its potential?
Primarily from a technological point of view, like how it was done, how the servers talk to each other, how when you've got a router at home and your computer connects to the router, you're sitting on a private network, as opposed to back in the day, you used to plug in your router, a dial-up modem into your computer itself, and then your computer would have the IP address. You know, that was the time of LimeWire and Kazaa and all that.
All that whirring and chirping from the modem,
Yeah. And just being like bareback on the internet, directly downloading viruses and all that stuff. It was a crazy time.
I love that phrase, bareback on the internet. I want that on a t-shirt. That's brilliant.
So, and I think that and we had some sort of conspiracy-minded guys back then, because they had access to things that a lot of people didn't, because the darker corners of the internet, even back then. So people would be running their own email servers rather than using cloud servers and centralized email providers. And I just think that was a very good education for me when I started going down rabbit holes. And I think it was a good, even back then, it was a good lesson in discernment. Like when some of the larger events have been going off over the last few years, the amount of content I've had to consume and sort of sift through and try and figure out what's true and what's not, what's a psyop, what's not, and it's very, very difficult. But I think that solid foundation in just the internet and the way it works and then the narrative creation. You talk about narratives, but these are sort of minor narratives compared to the grand narratives. To see these things building on the internet and how thought processes as a society is shaped. Anyway, I think it was a good foundation for me to have spent so much time on the internet, to know, well, here's where I can go and to find out information from places that aren't quite so censored. You know yourself that censorship is obviously one of the reasons why you're on the platforms that you're on.
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time on the dark web. That's too far for me to really go. But you don't have to really, if you're fairly adept at Telegram and Reddit and Pastebin and stuff like that. Well, Pastebin's a bit hackery, but
I think for me, how to say this, I kind of know that there's something going on, and it's not something that I woke up to a year ago or 2 years ago. It's been very clear to me for a long time there's been something going on, but the kind of, let's say, harvesting information, trying to digest information that other people have harvested and put onto the internet, it's always seemed to me to be something that you could put too much time into when peripherally, like with your peripheral vision, you can just tell there's something going on. There's something up. I don't really need to know for me, this is me personally, I don't need to know the absolute fine detail of it all. And it always interests me when I meet someone who has taken the time to do that kind of thing, because you actually used the phrase that you went down rabbit holes. Yeah. I think that's how you said it. Some of those rabbit holes must have taken you way off track. Yeah. And, I don't know how many hours of disinformation you had to go through before you just thought, okay, wow, that's rubbish. And then you have to come back and look at something else and you realise, okay, I think that's true. How do you discern those things? What is it that's behind it all that makes it true for you? Okay.
And this is what makes it very personal to each person, I think, because we've all got our hundreds of thousands of data points that we've been picking up from birth.
Yeah.
And that forms our image of how we see the world and the story that we believe.
Can I just dive in there, because we were talking about this beforehand, just
Yeah.
literally before we started, and I think that for me this is, if not, it's a crucial point, if not the key point, and that is this idea of grand narratives. And I was saying to you, that if you can figure out what someone's, that water's just gone down the wrong way. Hang on a second, I've just got to flush it. If you can figure out what someone's grand narrative is, if they can explain it to you, you then know what story they believe in the background that's making everything real for them. Mm-hmm. And this, more and more for me, this is what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to find out what is behind this story that people are putting out into the world. What is it that they really believe in the background? So I think that's really what I'm getting at here. What is it that you believe, and then how did you match these things up with it? These things that you've been researching.
Right. Well, a lot of it...
excuse me.
Over the last couple of years, I think it was really boiling down to, and if it sounds a bit tinfoily, it's not my intention, but either we're in some kind of prison planet state where, and that's the sort of dark way of looking at it, but the other way is that it's like a school, and it's just a really hard school.
Yeah.
So this is bringing in the spirituality element to it, and that's way, way, way more where I'm leaning than. But I was sort of flip-flopping between the two. Like, well, yeah, but if it is a school, then how can this be going, and how can this band? Like it was just really having trouble.
When you say a school, do you mean that this is the Earth that we're on is a construct constructed by some other intelligence, and we've been put here to learn? Is that what you mean? Something like this? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I'm just trying to understand the story.
I mean, I think a lot of things are allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe not constructed exactly the way they are, but the process of light and dark and how they develop through their levels, and this is a lot of this is really new for me.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that I'm looking into, like the law of one, I mentioned last time we spoke. But this is sort of hot off the press for me. But it's helping me to understand some of the things that I found difficult to understand before. Like, but how can this be happening? Because if there is a God, how can all this bad stuff be happening? That's the very simple way of saying it.
Yeah. I think that's quite an old question, though, isn't it? That's a question that people have been asking for thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
How can the gods or a god let these things happen? Yeah. So I think that's quite an existential question. Yeah.
And all this, I didn't spend too much time thinking about these things until the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Because a lot. What
was the trigger, or the catalyst, or the chain of events that got you thinking?
When the lockdowns all first started, because there was the talk about the is there any words I can't say?
No, you can say whatever you want.
Right.
It's me that's how to say it. If you say something that you don't want to say, tell me later. I'll edit it.
You're not going to try and put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
You're going to try and put it on YouTube.
Maybe, yeah.
Because there's some words that will get you.
Yeah.
It will
say the word, and then we can.
Like coronavirus, vaccines, all that kind of stuff, right? So when all that craziness started.
So there's some AI on YouTube that will, if you say that word, it will focus in on it. Yeah.
Or it can just ban the video.
Yeah.
So a lot of the truthers are very careful especially if they're doing a YouTube live. We can't say that word, so they do things like that, and referring to. I
need a list of these words because I have no idea what they are. I mean, I know that all of this is going on.
Yeah.
And for me, how to say it, I just say it the way it is. I could give a shit if I get banned from YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Where was I? So dark and light. I started off with all the COVID stuff. So I went because I knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
I didn't believe the whole. Well, at first I was like, okay, so maybe there is this thing that's just sweeping around the world, killing everyone.
It was such a bizarre time.
It was really bizarre, and then I remember having some of the conversations with a friend of mine, Keith, and he's got a brilliant mind, and we were like just talking about is there going to be a meteor strike, and we're just trying to get everyone in. There was the amount of things that we were just considering as possibilities.
Yeah, I know.
Was incredible because we thought we've never seen this kind of action. But a lot of the internet narrative was very fear-based on the social media, and it was there was a big, is the word propagation of information talking about Klaus Schwab Agenda 2030, the globalist agenda.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that kind of makes sense. It kind of feels like something they might do because I've got. If you've done any research into 9/11 and you've come up with the conclusion that there was something really dodgy about that and that what actually happened wasn't what the mainstream narrative is, you think, well, okay, if they can do that, what are they up to now? And that's kind of where I was coming into this thing.
So you use that word or that phrase flip-flop. So did you go from one thing to another, backwards and forwards, from one idea to another?
Yes.
Because it's a bit like, did Neil Armstrong really set foot on the moon? There's so much information about whether he did or whether he didn't, and it's possible to flip-flop backwards and forwards. Yeah.
Yeah. And so our mutual friend Kino.
Yeah.
He keeps he calls it the grey zone. So we've got this gigantic grey zone.
Yeah. My grey zone is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so and really,
the thing about grey zones is that there's some things in my grey zone now, today, that for a long, long, long time I considered to be fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now they're in a grey zone.
I mean, I see that as a quote. I see that the ability to maintain many possibilities without having to be in 100%. It's a sign of intelligence, but I don't know if that's some ego stroking thing that I've read somewhere.
It's both and. We tend to be very black and white about things. It's either like this or it's like that. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's a lot of cases where it's both and. It can be both things, or a bit of both. Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think that there's not that many of the large conspiracies that are left that haven't at least got a large amount of information that's compelling.
Yeah.
Because when you have science, which also has a lot of compelling information pointing to its arguments, which a lot of it can be corrupted, can be we've seen science and its figures over the last few years misleading entire swathes of the population.
Yeah.
So the time of the era of proof and numbers providing enough proof for us to believe things is over. And
I'm not okay. I don't want to break up your flow, but I just want to interject if I feel it's kind of relevant. I mean, I think that there's a difference between pure science or pure scientists. So pure scientists they're not influenced by a religion or a corporation or politics. They're really genuinely searching. They're trying to find truths. And I think that the best example of that, of a scientist like that for me is Rupert Sheldrake. Okay, he's written a book called The Science Delusion. And basically what that does is it goes through, I can't remember, 10, 20, it's something like 10 or 12 dogmatic truths in science that he shows, there's compelling evidence to show that it's not true. Mm-hmm. But every scientist will argue with you that this is true. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. I think that there are scientists who they're more worried about who they're going to get their funding from, or how their career's going to go, or backing up a political agenda than they are being.
Yeah.
But I think that true, pure science still exists. It's not the mainstream anymore, but it does exist.
Okay, so. Yeah, so if I just sort of slightly refine what I was saying in terms of that, just having numbers and just having data isn't enough. There's still a discernment, a level of discernment involved, and this is what I've really come to, is that I'm sort of feeling into things a lot more.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a subtle, like I said, with the collections of hundreds of thousands of data points from all the information that we've absorbed. And what resonates. And you can't just say to someone, when I say, look, I think this is going on, well, show me the proof. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And in fact, we'll get onto it later, but with so like the 432 thing, I reached out to someone else who tunes a piano 432, and I was like, look, have you got anything like proof?
When you say they tune their piano, is it an electric piano or a real piano?
I think it's a real piano.
Wow, because that's a big change. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, Richard's done that.
Yeah.
So, and and I've got a friend of mine who lives in Germany. He's an engineer. Works at BMW. And I don't talk to him about a lot of the things that I think about, because he's like, well, show me the proof.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's just like, okay, well.
So he's a rationalist. Yeah, like he wants. Okay, yeah. I'll buy into that if you can show me the proof. Yeah, and sometimes it's very difficult to show proof.
But even then, I think.
Is that what you mean, that you some of these things are difficult to prove? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, because there's a lot of data that suggests the other side. You know, there's because there's so much information, disinformation. There's an equal or maybe even more information. Data suggests the opposite. Yeah, and I think that's why we're often perpetually in a state of confusion, or the population is often perpetually in a state of confusion. Even things like diet. Should you be intermittent fasting, or should you be on like the carnivore diet? There's loads about carnivore diet, and there's loads about vegan diet, and then no, it's not vegan. They're trying to remove testosterone from the males, and they're trying to push this agenda. And there's so much in every facet of our lives. Yeah,
I think that particular subject is quite an easy one, though. Diet. I mean. There's this very mechanistic view that we are human beings and we all function more or less in the same way. But I don't think that's true. I think there's so many different ways that we function. So you will find someone who, if they only ate meat, they'd get really sick. Mm-hmm. But there are other people that if they only eat meat, it really, really works for them. And it's the same with vegetables. If they eat too many vegetables or too many of a certain kind, it's going to make them sick. If they lay off that, they're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Other people, they can eat that vegetable all day and they'll be fine. I just don't think I don't think it's so mechanistic that you should eat like that. No, I think that you need to find out what works for you. I don't think people go into that kind of... They don't do that kind of personal research.
Yeah, it's... and a lot of it, I think, is distraction, because what we should also be talking about is, well, can we get rid of the Monsanto stuff out of the food supply chain? Yeah. And is it really celiac disorder, or is it really just reactions to glyphosate, which is massively in wheat, because the farmers are just pouring glyphosate to get extra yield from their crops. But
have you ever had this thing where you go into a supermarket? I mean, there's certain supermarkets that I'll go into, and literally 98% of what's on the shelves I wouldn't touch. It's just rubbish.
What, even the veg?
You know these kind of like... if you go into a town, there's like a local supermarket. It won't be a chain. It will be, like a local supermarket, and everything that they've got there is just rubbish. just like boxes of refined sugar and blah blah, and cans of stuff, and every single drink that they've got, when you look at it, there's hardly any fruit juice in it, and it's all been concentrated and blah blah blah. It's just rubbish. Yeah.
Well, that is a very, very significant part of our journey that we've been on as a family. Yeah. Because my son, he was very sensitive to any kind of refined sugar. Yeah. Anything white, fast carbs, white pasta, white bread, anything sweet. So Spanish birthday parties were terrible because the kids are just running around getting jacked up on sugar. Yeah. And we noticed it would change his mood. He would just crash. He would just start crying, and that was from when he was like 2, and he's now 10. So we've been on this journey about discovery, about diet. Slow release carbohydrates, getting fiber in your diet, and it's been a huge. I've turned around. I used to eat meat 3 times a day probably, and I was a big drinker. Now I don't drink. But so we've really turned that aspect. So it's funny how these things come into your life as teachers, and he's doing great now. He's doing Muay Thai and he's getting muscly, and it's great to see him crashing about in the waves. Yeah. But from that knowledge, and we've put in tons and tons of hours of discovery and research for the diet stuff. That's why we almost nearly, I've got the domain lifewithdiets.com. We nearly did a whole how to eat with different diets in your family, how to cook and prepare meals with different dietary requirements. It's just been a time thing. But the journey of health and diet has really been incredible, and this comes into the whole sovereignty thing that I'm guessing is on your list. Yeah, we got to take control of these things, and obviously not just eat all the rubbish that's in these boxes, and prepare your own food. Grow your own food is something that I've got to get to, but we haven't got the right place for it yet. Well, no, that's an excuse. Of course, you can grow your own food wherever you are. Anyway. Sorry, I've really gone off. No,
it's fine. You can digress as much as you want.
But diet fascinates me. Health fascinates me, and it's really through friction. And this is part of the thing with this realm that we're in. We need the friction to grow. Yeah. And we've had so much friction over the last few years that we're just growing all over the place. People are waking up to certain things. And growing and really, I've been kick-started along, pushed a much further along on my spiritual quest than before, being very 3D about stuff and, I've got this plan and we want to try and make this money and have this business, and then, whereas now we're so much more involved with the kids. Yeah. So much more involved with vision boards, like what do we want to do as a family, what kind of adventures do we want to do,
do you get the kids involved in this?
In fact one of our biggest decision that we're making about our direction has come from, we went for a hike with the kids and we were talking about, okay, so what do we want to do? Like, we can have if we've got these houses for sale, we're gonna get another house and have nice, all the stuff that we want. Have
the list, the tick sheet.
Yeah, maybe we could have a pool and a cinema or something. The gym. Or do we want to go off travelling and have an adventure instead? And which one would you rather do first? And the kids are like, we want to do adventure, so that's what we're going to do. And that's fantastic. We're just gearing up for that. And so that they were if they'd have said, oh no, we don't want to leave our friends, we don't want, because they could have said anything. Yeah. And we would have been like, okay, well, let's do that. Yeah. But as a family, we all chose adventure. So that's what we're getting ready for now. Okay. Because we're stepping into the unknown. Yeah. And it's a great time to do it. 8 and 10 years old. Wow. So we're psyched about that, and we're waiting to see how the universe is going to deliver it, because we don't really have the means to do it right now, but we're close to. You can feel it. Yeah. That's why I've been painting for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of adventure are you talking about? Camper vans. This is something that we mentioned before. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to do it if we can't.
Life. Yeah.
If we can't get a vehicle we're just going to go in the car and sort of Airbnb it or campsites or whatever. And we decided that we're not going to create a conditional, well, we'll do that if.
Yeah. No,
Because
I
apparently
understand.
that's a bad thing to do with the universe. Don't create conditions, because it will say, well, actually, well, then you won't get to do that ever until that other condition's done.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to have an adventure.
Yeah.
And we either sell this house or we rent it out. But we're going to remove ourselves from that equation and go off. We're going to have our adventure regardless. It's just, do we have a vehicle or not to do it in?
Okay. So the world's your oyster, literally. I mean, it's not. You talk about Europe, or it could go further afield.
Europe to start with.
Yeah.
Because we've got some, like, there's the kid's great grandmother sort of around here. She's with us at the moment, so she's going to have her own place, and so we don't want to be too far.
Yeah.
And we won't fly at the moment. Mm-hmm. We're not doing the flying. Mm-hmm. It's just, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Okay. And what about schooling? I mean, this is another thing on my list. I actually wrote it down because I've got this PDF of like bullet points that I wanted to ask you about. But one of the things I didn't put on there, but it came up before, was schooling and homeschooling. Yeah. Is this something that you're doing?
Yeah, it's. I'd rather talk off camera.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine, yeah. I mean, this is something that's not a huge thing for me because my son's like nearly 1.5, it's like 1 and 4 months. But at some point, we will, like hit that point where we have to make a decision about schooling. And I've just been talking to so many people about it. There's one guy, I haven't actually spoken to him, it's just I've looked at a few things that he's posted online. A guy called Mickey Willis. I don't know if you've heard of him. No. Okay, I'll show you it later on then. But I can't remember. I think that he set up an initiative in America. I think he's based in Texas, Austin, Texas, maybe somewhere like that. And it's something like Lion's Pride or Young Lions or something like this. And it's a group of people that have got together. They all wanted to homeschool their kids, and essentially they set up an academy. So they found curriculums and I think that it's online. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it looks very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting guy.
The current institutions are archaic and need, if not completely destroying, it's a serious renewing.
Yeah.
And there's too much, far too much pressure on children, like doing bi-weekly tests and getting stressed out at 10. It's not right. I don't think it's right. I don't agree with it. And we see a lot of people in that scenario, and we're thinking, well, for what? Like, literally 90% of the stuff that I learned at school has not helped me in the slightest. Yeah.
Do you know where I'm at with this? And I'm aware how fast time, time just flies by. So it's not really a big issue for me right now. Maybe in 2 or 3 years' time it'll be more of an issue. But that time will just go so fast. And that is that I think one of the main things that being in school does for a kid is that it integrates them into their local community, and which is either a good thing or a bad thing depending on the local community. And that's the only thing that I still don't fully understand about homeschooling, how you kind of get that balance so that your kid has got a local community that they've actually got their feet in, and that they're involved in, and they're meeting people, and they kind of like can see with their own eyes what's going on in their little bit of the world. And how do you get that balance? That's the thing that I still don't fully understand yet.
One of the things we're doing is the kids go to Muay Thai, which is like a martial art.
Yeah.
So 3 times a week we go, which is great for me because I get to go for a run while they're doing that.
What's it called?
Muay Thai.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
MUAY. It's like a kickboxing.
Yeah, okay.
They're not there just beating each other up. It's like they're doing training like press ups and
Discipline
sit ups
and all that kind of stuff.
And so then you've actually got a bunch of kids that are like minded, and they're there for the same reason, which is getting fit and looking after themselves and being able to defend themselves. And
so that club provides a social network for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you don't have to do just one thing. You can do many things, and it's more of a fun environment. So you can easily replace that social element. But there's developments happening all over the world. I'm not in a position to be able to comment specifically right now. I mean, we are kind of between countries at the moment. Mm-hmm. So obviously I'm British. Homeschooling is okay for British. So we're kind of flip-flopping between England and Spain at the moment, kind of thing. So...
what do you mean physically? What, you go back for...
We have. Certainly the last 6 months we've been twice for reasonably large chunks, and possibly might be moving over there maybe for like a few months at a time, because my dad's there. He's got a nice big house. So it's this whole sovereignty thing again. Like, are you legally somewhere, and what things do you have to abide by? Because the machine says, well, you've got to do this because you're here.
Should we dive into that?
Okay.
Can I just look at my notes a second? Okay. Because, let's say it like this. I'm massively interested in this topic. I haven't done much research on it. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that I talked to Richard about. Richard, he mentioned all of this to me, and we had a couple of conversations about it. And so it's kind of like been on my list of things that I would really like to know more about. That I don't really have an opinion about it at the moment. I don't know whether it's... I couldn't say whether I think it's a conspiracy or whether it's not a conspiracy, or whether it's true or whether it's not true. All I know is, and I'll just be totally honest about this, I would just be completely frank about it. Someone told me about a Telegram group here in Andalusia, mainly of English people. I don't think it's all English people. I think there are some Spanish people, and there are some people from Germany and Belgium and what have you. But it's mainly English people who are talking about this topic. And I suppose, it sounds ridiculous to say it like this. I've never actually interacted with any of them. I've just watched, I've just watched the feed and looked at a few of the things that they've posted. And to me, it looks like a bunch of confused people. I really have to be honest about it.
What's the topic?
The topic is sovereignty. Uh-huh. So I'll try and be a little bit more specific, because I am open-minded about this, but there's been a lot of mention of this idea of common law and natural law, and that this natural law is something that comes from God. It's it's a religious imperative. It's something that is kind of like encoded naturally into the world because God designed it that way. And when someone says something like that to me, I'm just immediately out.
Right.
Just immediately I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't make sense. This idea that, I'm not there's natural law, and the way that we interpret natural law is common law. And common law is this idea that you do no harm, you cause no loss, you come from truth, and you have the right to live anywhere, and there's no borders. You can travel freely. You can move, freedom of movement. Okay? So yeah, that sounds fantastic to me. It's very, very simple, and it's something that I can really grasp and understand. But the idea that comes from natural law, well, if I look at nature, including mankind, I'm not removing. In my own head, I don't look at the natural world and think there's the animals and humans are separate from it. We're all part of this natural world. In the natural world, with animals, mostly what you see is animals killing each other, eating each other, tormenting each other. There's a lot of suffering in the natural world. There's no indication that they have this natural law encoded into them, that they'll do no harm, cause no loss, and come from truth. Is preposterously ridiculous to me. But I like that idea, but I don't think it's a natural law. I think it's a man-made philosophy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting. So, yeah, it's like, well, where did it come from? Yeah.
So immediately I hear someone telling me this came from God, I'm like, out. So I'm very open to this, because I do think that Roman-based or papal-based law and the law based on the English legal system, this Commonwealth law, this idea of the Commonwealth, is terrible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's overcomplicated. It's totally.
Well, they say it's maritime.
Yeah, and maritime. Yeah. So I'm going to shut up now, because I'm more interested in what you have to say to it than me saying what I don't know about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you're right in that they are man-made constructs in terms of, well, we've got these God-given rights, but man has written it down. And you've got a different.
I contest that, but I'm not going to say anything. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
This idea of God-given rights, but anyway.
Okay, well, I was just saying, man has come up with this. They've written that down.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
For the purposes of this conversation, that's how I see. Okay, well, natural law isn't that just someone found a tablet that was created by Mother Nature.
Okay.
It was like a man is. I don't know too much about the history of where it came from, but men must have written it down.
Yeah.
Because if it's in English or some language that it came from, it's got to be I'm kind of agreeing with you that it's a
construct.
A construct, yeah. But I think also there's different levels. So you've got constitutions, like the American Constitution. We've got one in Spain as well, which we heavily read through, and with a fine-tooth comb when it came to the masks. So we really got involved with that, and we have the right to breathe uninhibited. So we knew about that, and that was a right, and it is it came down to, like, if you've got any reason that to not wear a mask, i.e. that your body needs to function normally, then you have the right to not wear a mask. It was how it came down to. But this is the thing that became alarmingly clear, is that rights mean nothing if the people doing the enforcing don't pay attention to those rights. And this is the real issue. It's like, you can go and say, well, my natural law is this, and I don't need to have a registration plate on my car, and I don't. I renounce my birth certificate and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people doing that in America. There's people doing that in Britain. It doesn't work in Spain.
Does it not? Because this is what the group that I'm on is all about.
People are coming unstuck big time. They're getting their kids taken away from them.
They create this affidavit. Yeah, is that the right term? They have something drawn up by a Hester or a lawyer, which is an affidavit, and it basically asserts that they are a real human. Is that correct? Something like this?
I don't know exactly how they're going about it, because we've steered away from it because we know of the legal pitfalls. One of the first things we did with all the COVID stuff is we seeked out. Is that the past of seek?
Sort out.
Sort. There we go. Sort out. A lawyer who was very, very vocal at the beginning, particularly when it came to children's rights.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, I keep on interrupting you. Please hold that thought.
Yeah.
And if this is irrelevant, then I think that I saw a video. I think it might have been your wife translating a lawyer. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that the lawyer that you're talking
Yeah.
about? That's just I remember seeing this, but it's slightly off topic, isn't it? Because that's something to do with a change in law that was brought in the last day of the government's term. I don't know what they call it. Yeah, is that related to this?
Well, he's the guy that we sort out. And things that at that time things were changing on a daily basis. So we were helping to get out the news or because the government were just doing this and they were reacting as the people were reacting. The government would say, "Oh well, we're going to do this now."
Can you just remind me what that law was?
I can't remember. It was
okay.
Because was that at Peggy's place? There was like a conference where there were a few different. There was some doctors talking. Was it that one or was it something else?
No, it was something that Kino sent me, and it was something to do with last summer. Literally on the last session of government before they took their summer holiday and all the lawyers went on holiday for a month, they introduced some law, which in itself was very unusual because usually there's a much longer process. And I can't remember what it was about, but I remember that this lawyer was being translated by someone. I think it was your wife. That was it. That's all I can remember.
Okay. Well, this gets us back on. He has, in fact, up in Madrid last week. We were up in Madrid. There was a lawyers' round table. So we're quite connected with this world because we're in Spain.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that we had the right information because the guys with the guns are following a certain set of guidelines. So we want to know, well, how are we working with those guidelines? Because it's ultimately who's enforcing the rules that have got the power.
Yeah.
You know, they say government's just a monopoly on force. Well, this is what's going on. But these lawyers are working very within the maritime construct or the Commonwealth, the Spanish legal system, and with all its nastiness and overbearing force. Yeah. So they're working with that. But actually, did you know that in this article? You can't do that, and you've got to give the current law, the lowest law, not the natural law, the common law, none of that.
Yeah,
you've got to go right down to the
Constitution.
and even just to the one that the police follow.
Yeah.
Because they don't often know it, because they're just going with the narrative and what they're being told by their boss, and a lot of that doesn't even go in accordance with the normal Spanish law. So I think it's nice to have that as a concept about natural law and common law, and I think that's how it should be. It shouldn't be like, well, all of a sudden the government says that you've got to do that, and that there's too much money tied up in everything. But that's not how we are at this current state, and you can get into a lot of hot water. People have been thrown in jail for trying to do this common law stuff. And I don't mean to scaremonger. I really don't.
Yeah.
Because if everyone turned around and said...
I know at least 3 people that have told me that they've done it. And
right.
But I've never talked to them in detail about why or the process or how to say it. What's the benefit to them? What do they see the benefit as? I just know that it's a thing.
I'd love to know what it got them out of.
Yeah.
If it got them out of something.
The things that always seem to get mentioned are things like speeding tickets or a bank loan. You don't, or being able to go into a property and take ownership of it. So to me, it seems like people are using it to get themselves out of trouble that they got themselves into.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a hot topic, but we've been advised to just work within the confines of the current system to try and change it from that way. And I think
what is it that you would change? What are the key things that you see to be a problem?
Wow. I think every major structure in society needs revamping, really.
Yeah. Okay.
So legal, financial, well, we'll get onto the financial, I guess.
Yeah.
Definitely education, fuel, energy. The energy sector's just a massive con, I think, but I can't prove it.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I don't want to go too far off topic, but I just wanted to know whether you're aware of this, because sometimes when I say this, when I hear myself saying this to people, I just wonder whether I dreamt it or made it up. But do you remember that, like, maybe 8 or 10 years ago in Spain, all of a sudden there was a new law that was introduced, and more or less what the law said was that the sunshine in Spain belongs to the king.
Oh, the sun tax. Yeah.
I didn't make it up. I didn't imagine it.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
And you have to pay a tax if you've got solar panels to the king, to the government, via the government.
Yeah,
crazy,
that massively hindered the energy independence. Yeah. And it was around about that time, I remember flying, I was doing a lot of Ryanair flying at the time, and every time I would come into this airport in Germany, in this sort of rather grey little town, all these houses were just covered in solar panels, and you're like, wow, they were so far ahead. Yeah. In these grey countries, like paying nothing for their energy now because they've got their houses plastered with panels.
And the main thing we got here is sunshine, and for a while it was almost impossible to do anything about it without paying a lot of money.
Yeah, I really like what Kino's been doing. Yeah,
I think it's totally fine to say what Kino's been doing. Tell us.
Okay, so he's
Kino's a mutual friend.
Yeah, he's an engineer from very techie but hands-on tech, not just like programming techie, but hands-on build stuff techie, and he's been doing a lot of research into the battery technology and how you can use these inverters that they're not massively expensive. They're like what, €700-800 or something, I guess they are now. And you can hook them up with these lithium iron phosphate batteries, not to be confused with lithium ion, ION, but lithium iron, the metal. Yeah. And they're low cost, but they're heavy, so they're not good for automotive. So everyone's looking at these Tesla Powerwall things, and they're using lithium ion like you get in a mobile phone battery. But they've got a limited number of charge cycles. You've got to charge them in a certain way. They don't last as long. They're not as good in the heat. So this lithium iron phosphate, LiFePO4, I think it is. You can build the battery packs up from individual cells, and he's actually been doing this. He's been buying them from Alibaba, building the battery packs, and then you connect them up in serial, in parallel if you want 24 volts. It's pushing the limits of my hands-on electrical knowledge. Yeah,
I mean, it's radically changed my understanding of electricity and electromagnetism. Mm-hmm. And this is something it's on my list of things that I thought I understood, and now it's in a grey area because I'm realising that I'm having to completely re-understand it from the bottom up. And actually the electromagnetism and this whole thing to do with batteries kind of links with 432 in a strange kind of way. But we'll get to that.
Just while I think of it, I saw a great meme. Have you seen the planes don't use jet fuel conspiracy theory? Have you seen it? You haven't, right? No. It's interesting.
What do they use then?
Well, there's the ether, The etheric energy. This is what the conspiracy says. Right, I haven't looked into it enough. No. However, I don't think there's enough room in the planes for all the fuel that they say they've got, and I don't think they spend enough time refueling for all the fuel. There's been some really, really interesting studies into it, and I think there's something there potentially.
Can I just say something? Whenever I hear something like this, okay, my first question is, why hasn't some pilot at some stage said something about it? Because they must be in on the conspiracy. There's hundreds of thousands of pilots around the world who have been, and this has been, like 50 years, 60 years, 70 years of the airline industry. You would have thought that one of them would have got drunk one day and, like in a bar and said something to someone, and the whole thing would have leaked out. I just don't get it. How do you get so many people to? We're
in a closed environment with the media's been controlled. Like these things don't get out and go viral because the controllers, if there are such a thing, they control the flow of information. So some guy getting drunk in a bar, I don't think you've got Buzz Aldrin saying on stage that they didn't go to the moon. And it's not a big story.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
But anyway, going further on from the jet fuel thing, I saw a picture of Concorde.
Yeah.
And they said the reason Concorde.
Some people will tell you that ether doesn't exist, by the way.
Yeah, I can. I'm sure. I'm sure that many people would go against that, but I think Nikola Tesla was onto something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so. When you look at a Concorde, its wings are even smaller than like a 747.
Yeah.
And apparently the reason they really got rid of the Concorde was because the insane amount of jet fuel you'd need to get from London to New York in like 3 hours, there's no way you could it just doesn't have the space for it.
So jet engines don't run on jet fuel. They don't run on whatever. What is jet fuel? It's some kind of oil-based, like crude oil-based product, yeah, kerosene or something like this.
Yeah. So you think about how much a Concorde would need to carry that amount of cargo at that speed. It's a lot of fuel. It's more than like your 747 would need.
Okay.
But you look at a picture of the Concorde and it's just like this super streamlined
Where do they put it?
Yeah. So, because that's easier to get on board with than the normal jet fuel one. Because the Concorde was so fast and so streamlined.
All of these videos you see of like Air Force mid-air refueling, it's just all a conspiracy, a hoax, yeah? They're not really putting... more fuel on.
This is just hot off the press. This is one of the new ones that I find exciting. It's like, okay, yeah, you know what? Because I'm re-examining everything. I'm like, okay, anything goes right now.
Yeah.
Anything goes. And it's not like you have to prove me a conspiracy. It's like, well, how about you have to prove me what the status quo says? Because I'm in that like, well, everything's possible.
Yeah.
And I'm just in a state of re-examining everything. So I'm not 100%, well, no, it's this way because I've always been told that. If I haven't been shown a compelling argument as to why, then that's up for re-examination, Do
you mind if I just rub it a bit?
Yeah.
Because, so the things that are coming up in my head and in a weird way, at least for me, they kind of link together, okay? So this idea... So, for example, we were talking another time about solfeggio. And I'm familiar with solfeggio in terms of, like do, re, mi, like that system of notating or understanding musical notes. But I didn't know anything about the solfeggio sequence. Is that what you were talking about? I hadn't heard of that until you told me about it a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, the solfeggio sequence. And I looked into it. And so I looked into it with a totally open mind. But I got like maybe 5 or 20 minutes, like a small amount of time into my research and just completely abandoned it because... it was telling me that this was something that was backed up by something that was encoded in the Bible, and that if you look at the numbers of different texts in the Bible and mathematically look at it all, you will come up with the solfeggio sequence in terms of these frequencies in hertz. And immediately my question is, so the Old Testament is more than 2,000 years old. We don't really know how many years old it is. How was it that someone more than 2,000 years ago came up with a code that they encoded into these verses of the Bible for us to discover later that referenced hertz, which we didn't actually come up with until the 19th century?
Mm-hmm.
Game over. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I haven't seen that particular line of research.
It's just that's what I came up with immediately that I started looking at it. Where did it come from? And that's what that's apparently where this guy got it from. He got it from he found a pattern, or he thought he found a pattern in verses in the Bible, and put it together mathematically, and unbelievably it came up with these frequencies. And this is the whole basis of the solfeggio sequence. That it's something religious. It comes from God. It's something that was that has been encoded into the Bible. Okay, game over. I'm out. Don't need to do any more research into that. It's a nice idea, but it's just immediately for me, things like that. It's just game over.
Yeah.
So I mean, sorry. So what I'm trying to get to here is that there's this idea that there's some kind of frequency that is, or a set of frequencies that is better for human beings than other ones. In a whole different, in various ways, it's better for us, which implies that there are other frequencies which are in various ways which are bad for us. I'm totally open to that idea. That's a possibility. The thing is that when we're talking about frequencies, we're talking about hertz, this measurement of hertz, and we've already talked about this off camera. For me, this is just an arbitrary number.
Because it depends on the second. Because who defined how long a second was.
Yeah.
So this is why I don't like anything whenever people say, the number has a special mathematical meaning, then I'm out of that because that's because a second is this long.
Yeah.
And that's how many cycles that happens within a second. So if a second was half a second longer, then
everything would be out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't like anything to do with that either. And the jury's out with me. I'm just in my research with this. Yeah. But I'll tell you where I am coming from.
But then I'll wrap it up, because I don't want to wrap it too much. I'm much more interested in what you have to say about this. But this idea of a wave, that's not what happens when sound is created. When we're talking, it's not like there's a waveform going from me to you and you're hearing it in this kind of like linear direction. This linear direction from me to you. The sound is coming out of my mouth and it's 360 degrees. It's like, like maybe it's more powerful in one direction, but it's going in all directions. So the waveform idea and the use of hertz is a very, 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 very oversimplified idea of how sound functions. It's just one way of analysing it. It's a very, very simple way of analysing it, but it's not what happens. Yeah. So again, I'm out.
Yeah. No, I agree. But there is a thing as resonant frequencies.
Yeah. Harmonic. So for non-musicians, it's like if you double or half a number. Sorry, if you take a note. So let's say A440. There's the contentious A440. If you double that, 880. That's a resonant frequency. Yeah, that's it's a harmonic. Or if you half it, 220. That's a harmonic. That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
But
tell me.
But it can work. But I mean, say. A sonic frequency can resonate in an organism. like a cell.
So just let me look at my notes. Are we talking about something like the Schumann resonance?
No, more like Rife.
Okay.
Rife machine.
I don't know what that
Royal
is.
Rife in the 1930s. It was. He was a scientist in the medical field.
Yeah.
And he realised that you can that cells and single-celled organisms and multi-celled organisms and viruses and things, they've got a resonant frequency.
Okay.
He would pass electrical currents through various media, and there's like a signature that the machine that was doing the detection. I know because I've got one now.
Yeah.
But the machine that detects the signal, it would effectively pass an increasing current or an increasing frequency of electrical signal through the media. And then depending upon what was in that media, there would be a spike in what the receiver would pick up. And that would be its resonant frequency. And then what you could do is you take the results and then you would actually blast the media with a higher amplitude of that frequency. And because it's the resonant frequency of that organism, it would actually burst and it would kill.
Okay.
So this is what I mean by resonant frequency.
Yeah.
So you can detect an organism will have.
It's like the opera singer shattering a wine glass.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but different yeasts have different frequencies. Cancer cells have different types of cancers have different frequencies. And the Rife machine can analyze and say, this guy's got like brain cancer, and you can then apply the resonant frequencies
of that tumor or that cancer. Yeah.
And it's like specific. It's so specific, and it's a massive breakthrough. And it happened in the 1930s, and it's been covered up. But it's coming out, and they've miniaturized the machines, and I bought one like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And I'm well into my research with that, and it's incredible. It's really incredible.
Is it as safe as it is dangerous, or is it very dangerous or very safe?
It's not dangerous at all.
No, but you said
dangerous.
it could explode. That if if you know the right resonant frequency.
Yeah, you're talking like
So
on a
if you knew
cellular.
my resonant frequency, you could point it at me and explode me. Yeah.
No. No. It's like using those TENS pads.
Yeah.
Those things that give you tiny little electrical.
Yeah.
And that can. You can get what's called a Herxheimer reaction. So if you kill a load of nasty bacteria or a load of yeasts or candida or something in cells, when they die, they release toxins. So you can feel a bit sick for a while. But that means you've killed all the bad stuff that you don't want in your body. It's fascinating. It really is. Started using it last summer. We were travelling around in the van, actually.
Yeah.
So probably in between filming for that Dragonfly music video, I was sat in August in a camper van with electrodes strapped to me, sweating in the 40-degree heat as I was doing my research, doing some treatments. But yeah, so resonant frequencies is a thing. And that doesn't rely upon the wave.
Has it made you feel more healthy in some way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't have all the answers because the tech's it's not super user friendly. You've got to tick boxes and change values and there's lots of parameters to it. Yeah. It's not had millions upon millions of research and nice graphical user interface and stuff. It's like you've got to be a little bit techie to use it. But I'm doing that, and I will probably do some videos on it at some point. But again, you can get your YouTube channel shut down if you make any claims.
Okay.
You're up against this cartel.
So I don't know what to do here because I want to get back to. I want to hear about the cartel. I want to get back to natural law. I want to hear about songwriting. I don't quite know how to do it because we were talking about natural law. And,
I just park that. I think we're getting there. We're getting there. I think enough people are waking up to well, hang on a second, why did I have to shut my business for 3 months and now I can't pay my mortgage?
Yeah.
Because the government said something that had a 99.9% survival rate. You know, these headline figures that I think it was a great, a wakey kind of session for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And everyone realised, well, hang on a second, the government, it doesn't appear that they have the best interests for everyone at heart. And that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But life's easier once you've got that. And this brings me back, this is the thing I wanted to say about the 432 stuff, right?
Yeah.
I work on the assumption now that there are, let's say, service to self organizations or malevolent, even if you want to go that far, controlling elements of society.
So what are you talking about, like a satanic cabal?
Well, I'm not even going that far.
Families that have been around for, millennia that are.
I've seen enough about like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the things that they've done, like even just changing the name of the petrochemical fuels to fossil fuels. That was the thing. They changed the name to fossil fuels to convince everyone that they were rarer than they were. This happened, I think it was in the 30s as well. So when you know, or you've got a good inkling that there are controlling forces that don't necessarily have your best interests at heart, it's healthy to start from a point of skepticism that when they get together and create a musical standard and they say, well, hang on a second, and the Rockefellers involved, the Rockefeller Foundation has got something to do with it, it kind of makes sense. Well, like, okay, yeah, if you've got everyone making music and our natural spiritual evolution is to become in harmony with nature, and we'll just find our way because that's our spiritual path. If you've got malevolent controllers that want us to not do that, because that will essentially mean that we're less able to be manipulated. I know it sounds a bit in that territory of tinfoil now, but that's kind of I'll go from an assumption that, well, if they've done something and created an ironclad standard that it's got to be that, then I'm immediately suspicious as to why. So I'm not going like on the assumption that, well, I know that 432 is connecting with all these beautiful harmonics of nature, because I haven't seen it yet. I haven't got anything tangible, but I'm basically working on the assumption that if they've said that, then I'm questioning it, because I've got a healthy skepticism of what the government and the people that set these overarching standards in place.
I think that's the key. That word, skepticism, I think it's very, very misunderstood. Yeah. But I think healthy skepticism is a very, very good thing. This wanting to question, But it comes back to this. This is what I think that pure scientists have got. They've got a healthy skepticism. They're questioning everything, and they want to get to the bottom of it. They want to get they want to get answers. But it comes back down to this kind of like scientific rigor, because there are some things that you just cannot explain. I mean, you said that yourself, that there are some things in this thing that you just can't pinpoint scientifically. I mean, you can't pinpoint spirituality scientifically. That's always open to debate. I mean, like if I tell you what my background, grand narrative, spiritual, my cosmology story, how I think everything came into being, and then compared it with yours or compared it with 5 other people that we meet today, it's going to be different. Yeah. So, yeah, I think skepticism is the key. I think that's I've said to people sometimes that I'm a real skeptic, like I'm really skeptical about a lot of these things. And they immediately think that that's me being negative, that it's a negative thing to be skeptical. I don't think it is. I think it's healthy. I think it's exactly the right phrase.
So we I think when you said about you can't measure, it just made me think of something. You said you can't measure spirituality scientifically.
Well, we don't have the device to do it yet.
I think we're creeping into, I wouldn't call it spirituality, but getting there, the non-physical. What I mean by that is things that you can't necessarily look and not tangible.
What different realms and dimensions and is that what you mean?
I'll give you a specific example. Well, there's two. One of them that I reached out to someone to see if they had any 432 proof for me.
Please.
And then she said about this the experiment which you can repeat where you've got 2 jars of rice, and then you can write on a piece of paper love and put it in that jar, and then put hate or like some really horrible stuff in the other jar, and then every day you go out and wherever it is, and you give love to that one jar of rice, and you I love you so much, and your intention is to love that jar of rice, and then you say really horrible things to the other jar of rice, and within like a few days, mold starts appearing in the jar of rice that you've been being horrible to, and the other one just stays fine.
And that's a repeatable experiment.
Yeah.
And then, what if I say things that are very loving to the rice, but actually in the background I'm hating it? Does it know the difference?
Well, I'm guessing.
Can you fool
I don't know. I don't know. That's like
Sorry,
the next level.
I'm being unhealthily sceptical there.
And but there's another one, and we've actually done this.
Yeah,
we've done this because there's I forget the name of the woman. But there was a Japanese scientist, and he did a lot of the studies. And you get water and you put it in a.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yeah. I think it's very, very, very famous and amazing. But you carry on. Yeah.
Well, so we so Christina, my wife, she was doing a lot of these. She was in a lot of Zoom meetings and we were privy to a lot of the real scientists coming out against the narratives that were coming out. So especially when it came
to
and so because we were trying to help out and get on the team, especially with can we help the Spanish to get some of this information as well. So we were on these Zoom meetings with various scientists and stuff. And what was the name of this woman? Anyway, so she's basically carried on from where this Japanese scientist left off. And she's written books on it. And we're in the...
It's photographs of water crystals or water... Is that right?
Yeah, so you take some water and you put a certain amount in a Petri dish, and then you write something underneath it, or you put some intention into it, but you write something under it, and then you put it in the freezer for a certain amount of time, so it completely goes like completely hard, but so that the top layer of crystal starts to form, and it's amazing. I mean, I don't know if I've got him on my phone, but it's compelling.
Yeah,
it's compelling that either the water has some kind of consciousness, or that the field of your energy that you're putting out, or that you're putting onto the piece of paper, that there's something non-physical, but it manifests as a pattern on the ice. And the more beautiful things that you said, the more beautiful the pattern was, and the converse is true. And that was very repeatable and fun, and we had the kids doing it, and we were like, wow. And you could like, so I would write music, and I would be getting it would look like a stave, and just visual elements that would indicate what you'd written down. You would see it in a little ice crystal somewhere. Like it's a shoe. It's like it's incredible. So we're getting into the discovery of the non-physical, which I think is when you can understand that there's things that are going on that you can't see, and that we're just existing in this very narrow band of frequency. That sound as wavelengths and our visual spectrum compared to the rest of the spectrum that's available into the the gigahertz.
Yeah.
And we're in this tiny little band, and we think that everything that we can see and touch. Whereas if we've got atoms vibrating at a different frequency, we can't even interact with them because they're just vibrating in a different way, and we can't even access that. We could have many levels of existence going on right here.
But you can't access them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't. You're like a receiver, and you can't tune into them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to. Okay, so this is a tricky thing for me to say. I've got to kind of like navigate my way around it. Okay, because first of all, I don't want to get into. I don't really want to talk about this too much. It's not that I want to avoid it. I just don't think it's too relevant now. But there are religions and people who obviously they have knowledge of those religious philosophies where the things that you're saying won't surprise them. It kind of like fits in with the cosmology of that religious philosophy. The obvious one for me, or the obvious ones for me, are Buddhism and, to a certain extent, Hinduism.
Okay.
Yeah. So someone who is listening, so let's say there's a Buddhist listening to what you're saying with some kind of even basic knowledge of Buddhist philosophy. The idea that the intention of what you put out into the world is going to have an effect on the world is not a surprise to them.
Right.
Yeah. Not by any means. And also, even down to things like sound having a beneficial or even a healing potential. Something went happen to the light. Yeah, the light went off. I don't know why. Okay, I'm not sure why that happened. But, like the idea of sound having a healing potential.
Yeah.
Or a beneficial potential. I mean, like in Buddhist meditation, there's mantras. It's the main thing, like intoning mantras, to have a beneficial effect on yourself and the world. Mm-hmm. So it's not a surprise to many people. So I think that I don't want to go too far into that because I don't want to go too far off track. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure out why that light's gone.
It's essentially where there is room for science and spirituality to coexist.
Yeah. No, I think that there is as well. I don't know if I can elucidate too much on that.
I'll just mention Joe Dispenza. Yeah. So Joe Dispenza, I think I mentioned on our last chat. He's a very science-driven. But he's delving into the spiritual. He's talking about the quantum realm, and when you get into a meditative state, and you've got a very clear vision as to what you want to manifest in your life. Yeah. You connect to the quantum realm, and you call these things into your life. But he's going very like data and EKG machines and measuring photonic fields, and like I've got a friend of mine who's bought the bioresonance. It measures your chakras and all this kind of stuff, and a real data-driven approach to essentially spirituality, and that we're connecting to the unknown to manifest things into our lives. And I think a lot more people are becoming aware about the concept of manifestation. Yeah. And when we realise that, holy shit, so we've been watching EastEnders and Coronation Street, and we've been manifesting drama like all the time.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Whereas that's not what we really want. So, but if we were aware, if humanity as a collective was aware of that power, and I think this gets thrown around, it gets spoken about a lot in the truther circles and the spirituality circle. Like, if we only realised how much power we had, we could change the world. Like, if everyone took their own power seriously and realised that we can co-create, that's very powerful. But well, what can I do? Said 2.5 billion people at the same time. Have you heard that meme? It's I think now we're starting.
So okay, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but it sounds to me that you're talking about this idea of transcendence. That right? There's we're at a time, a crucial point where humans are either going to be held back or they transcend. Is that kind of where you're getting to?
No, that's something else that I've been looking at. But I'm even talking about, well, let's just say, for example, that this manifestation thing is real, and we can tell the universe or a deity or multiples thereof what we want to experience in our life, and we focus on these things and we try and draw them to us. Okay, so we can use the Joe Dispenza science-driven, when you meditate and you can call in what you want, right? So if everyone started to do that on an individual level, then the universe will kind of conspire to make all these things happen so that everyone gets their wishes. But what would then happen is the collective would have to change. The collective, the scenario. So the global drama would change, because how can the universe deliver these individual manifestations to everyone if the rest of the world is fucked up? So I think...
okay, for me, that's a very mechanistic way of looking at it.
And it came to me about a week ago. I was like, so that's how, if you look after your square meter, you can that's how, like, the mechanism of how we change the collective.
Okay, so again, for me, that isn't that kind of line of thinking is not a surprise. I don't think it would be a surprise to, again, a lot of people who've got a background in certain philosophies, because I don't even think you have to link it to philosophy or religion. I think you can link it to common sense, and that is all of us at some point. Maybe it's not true that all of us, but I would imagine that most people get to a point where they realise they can't change other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe not politicians, maybe not, let's say, malevolent groups of people who think that that's the way forward. But you can't change other people. I can't change you. I mean, I can maybe at best. We can have a conversation and I say something that triggers a thought or two in your head, and it might change the way that you think about something. But I can't change you. I can't say, I can't do a restructure and change Louis Hanshaw. The only person that can do that is Louis Hanshaw, and the only person that I can change is myself. I think that's common sense for most people. The work, like, if you want to make change, then the first step is to look inwardly, and do the work on yourself.
This is really interesting, because with all the COVID stuff,
I am listening, but I'm going to try and see if I can figure out why this light went off.
There was a lot of, we've got to wake everyone up. We've got, this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. Well done.
Yeah. I'm blinding you. Sorry.
And it's a bit of a balance between, I think you have to speak your truth.
Yeah.
Don't just sort of blend in with what everyone's saying, because your truth, if you think something, I think you need to speak your truth. If someone, you don't have to broadcast it, you don't have to try and change people's minds. But I think if everyone spoke their truth.
But isn't your truth something that's developing on a daily basis?
Yeah.
That you've got stuff in a grey area and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like when I'm saying our kids are getting massive headaches and they're getting ulcers on their face from wearing a face mask, this is fucking ridiculous. That's our truth. And a lot of the Spanish parents were like, no, but just put up with it. They're fine. I'm like, no, this could be...
They're not, yeah.
Like, and they're all like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so, he's got to take another week off school. He just keeps getting these headaches. Well, take the fucking mask off. The kids. It's child abuse. So we lost a lot of friends. Well, they weren't really friends, but they were just there for us to, to speak our truth. And I think if we did, there's a lot of people that don't want to step outside of the social norms.
But that's another characteristic that I think is, it's worth mentioning briefly. When one starts to question things and develop, because the the natural progression from beginning to question things is that as a person you develop, because you get new information and new answers. You know, like you progress. Let's say not become progressive, but you progress in the purest sense of the word. You develop. One thing that you can guarantee when you develop is that your circle, the people that you're surrounded by, will change. And I couldn't put a percentage on it, but I would say that maybe you'll lose 99% of your friends. You'll find out who your friends are if you start to progress, because most people stay static. Yeah, that I'm sorry to say it like that. That sounds very high and mighty, but that's my observation, that most people don't progress. They don't question.
And even if not
it's more comfortable just to believe a narrative.
Yeah, and even if people are progressing, we don't all progress at the same rate.
Yeah,
you know, so you're still going to drift away.
Yeah,
and everyone is on a path. It might take them lifetimes longer than, you know, they've probably chosen it beforehand. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this. Was it judge you not lest you be judged kind of thing? They're on their path. They're doing their thing, and that's fine. That's fine. I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that, okay, this is the way we're going, but we're speaking our truth, but we can't wake everyone up. We can't wake anyone up.
Well, can I ask you then, can you tell me what you mean by spirituality? Because I'm sure it's a word, and I'm sure many people mean different things by it.
Okay.
Or your spiritual journey, or whatever. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what do you mean?
I think, yeah, because you've got different levels of. People like to say they're spiritual. I think it's a trendy thing to say.
And you start thinking crystals.
And look at this.
Yeah.
Christina made this.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's got the 108, which represent all the meridians in the body, apparently. So, anyway, yeah, I think part of it is realizing that you have a power, innate power, to manifest things, to call things into existence. So, like, if we ever say something like, "Oh, I hope we don't break down on the way to so and so," cancel that. Don't want that coming, because we've voiced it, we've made it. You know, words are spells, kind of thing. We at least entertain the concept. That things that we voice can potentially, we have a creative spark within us, and we don't want to call them in if we don't want to call them in. It's like the converse of the manifestations. The what is it you do with the beads?
Meditation.
And
the mantras.
The mantras is the word. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of them. We say, well, don't say it if you don't want it to happen. So we're realizing that as the potential power. I think there's a lot of comfort to be derived in the fact, if you don't think that you're just this accidental bunch of skin and bone that's a cosmic accident, and that this is all it is. I think that's why the fear response was so strong with the COVID narrative, was because everyone was, well, not everyone, a large proportion of the people think that this is all we've got.
Yeah.
And that's why people do shit things to each other for money, because they think that this is all we've got. And that's where a vast majority of the problems in society occurs, because people are doing horrible things to each other for money. There's a scarcity of it. And people bend their moral compass to get money.
Yeah, what's your price? Everyone's got a price, yeah?
Yeah, and so when you start to think in terms of, you know, maybe even that we're all part of the same thing in some way, shape or form. So if you're hurting someone else, you're hurting yourself. If you start to think like that, you think differently. And my concept of spirituality is changing on a daily basis as I listen to new podcasts, and these people that are studying, you know, texts that now seem relevant, like I mentioned, the law of one, that seems really relevant. There was a channeling done in the 80s.
But when you, just let me figure out what it is that I want to ask you. So like this word spirituality, it's like many, 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 many words. It means different things to different people. Like meditation is another word. Like if you say meditation to a person, it could mean so many things. You know, everything from relaxing to prayer to whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I hear that word spirituality, just off the top of my head, I start thinking about Greek philosophy, Socrates, about Jung and Freud and what they had to say about the soul, and Nietzsche, and God is dead, and all of this kind of stuff. There's a big kind of like cloud of not cloud shading, but like a big spectrum of information that you can dive into with that word. I think for me it's something like when you die, the essence of Louis Hanshaw is not dead. The Louis Hanshaw essence, excuse me, I just got to blow my nose a bit. But the Louis Hanshaw essence is still there somewhere, somehow. It doesn't just disappear. It's not, like over and out and you're gone. Mm-hmm. There's some consciousness or some something that lives on in some way. Like different religions and different philosophies will tell you that, one will say you go to heaven or hell, and another one say you'll reincarnate. Whatever it is, it's just there's something about us that isn't finished when we die, and I think that is the thing that underpins this idea of spirituality for me. That there's something more than just like a bunch of atoms and molecules all organised in a human form and thoughts and blah 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 blah. There's something more to it. So spirit. This idea of spirit, I don't buy into it. It's not a word that I would use, but somehow we use the word spirituality to kind of encompass all of these things that have to do with this essence that doesn't die. And I think that people have, at some point, they start to wonder about all of that, and they try to put a framework around it. And that's what spirituality is for different people, like it's different things for different people. So is that what you're talking about? Like that when you die, that there's some part of you that's going to continue. Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just feeling into this, like, and so because there's no proof.
Yeah.
So I'm just feeling what I'm feeling into, and the stuff that I'm listening to that resonates. And it kind of fits, it works for me, is that what's behind your eyes, the thing that sees behind your eyes.
Yeah, the thing that's looking, yeah.
And that's just that's in this avatar, if you will, to experience, well, what's it like being a white British guy growing up in the suburbs, and then moves to Germany and then Spain, and then has these kids, and and suffers this stuff and has this friction and learns these lessons, and then off to the next one. Maybe it kind of seems like, well, if I was a fractal of God and wanted to go off and experience everything, that could be a mechanism to do it. I don't have the answers, but I'm leaning into that one. That kind of works for me, like the to not be obsessed of the me is just this body and this collection of experiences that is part of something more. But I don't have the answers. I lean into that as a possibility that there's more.
Yeah. What did you believe before? I mean, when would you say this started? You mentioned something like 3 years ago, before COVID. What was Louis like before that? What were you thinking?
I mean, I've had a couple of like synchronistic moments where I've got a little clue that there's something else going on. There's more. So I didn't really study religion. I mean, I went to a Christian school, not heavily. It wasn't a church school, but when I first started there, they used to do assembly in the morning, and then you'd sing a couple of hymns and stuff like that. It was that kind of school. And that got phased out by the time I'd left. The removal of religion from schools was happening about then. So I always liked the idea that there was something more after you die. I'd never really is it nihilistic? I don't know, the word where you're just like, okay, well, that's it. When you're gone, and that's it. And it's one life, live it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a lot of proof.
But that is let's say, the overarching Western belief. Science is definitely the overarching scientific belief that we're mechanistic, we're a machine. Like we're a bunch of systems that work together, and when you die, it's over and out. And that's why it's very difficult for religion and science to exist, because obviously religion doesn't take that view. And now a lot of pure scientists don't take that view. But that is the predominant scientific dogma. Yeah.
Yeah, they're making progress when they start to look into what is consciousness, and that's where the science starts to knock on the door of, well, what is this thing that is consciousness? What is and that's when I think about what's behind the eyes. That's the consciousness.
Well, that's really interesting that you should say that, because I think that I haven't looked into this much recently, but it's something I looked into a few years ago, so it could have changed. So, but more or less, the idea in science is that consciousness is created by the brain. That's the overarching scientific belief. And if you're doing research into how the brain creates consciousness, then you'll get millions. You'll get billions and billions of research dollars to do this. Okay, but so far there's been nothing concrete that science can come up with that proves that, and it's completely against my intuition. And it's completely against a lot of philosophy, a lot of very, very, very poignant, well-directed philosophy. And the idea that comes from that philosophy is that consciousness is there, and that the brain is kind of like a receiver that picks up on it. Yeah, it's not created by the brain. But if you're a scientist and you want to do research into the idea that consciousness exists everywhere, and that we're just a receiver receiving that, you won't get any research dollars. There's very few to be had, because it doesn't fit with the mainstream scientific narrative. There are a few, and actually I know one of them. I'm not going to say what his name is, but I know two scientists that are doing research into that. But they've had to go around a huge maze in order to be able to kind of like get to be able to do that research, and they've had to publicly in their professional role. They can't really say what they think. Otherwise, they wouldn't get the money.
So, what does that tell you? When science as a whole is its sole purpose is to remove God and spirituality from our lives, so that we're more malleable. Maybe stepping a bit far there, but that's if you're removing the concept of maybe there's more than this, and you might want to be a good person.
Yeah, I mean. We're getting into territory that I don't really fully understand. I don't know if I can be that coherent about it, but I think that I don't think it was always like that. again, I'm not sure how much of the history that I know is true. You know, maybe it's fictitious, but I think at some point, first of all, religion was dominant. And if science went against religion, and the most obvious one would be that, like the Earth is the centre of the universe and that the sun was going around the Earth, that was religious dogma. And so if you as a scientist said something different, like the sun is a star and the Earth is going around it, that was heresy. And there were many scientists that were, they were tortured and persecuted for having that kind of view. But now, then it became mainstream. It became apparent that that was true, or more true than the Earth being the centre. Yeah.
But that could be the narrative as well. That
no, but I think all I was trying to get at is that I think that science was a fantastic thing, and it's quite a recent thing that it's become not such a fantastic thing, and that is solely because of corporate research money. If you're a scientist, scientists are like the new priests. And like if someone comes into the room and says, "I'm a scientist," it's like, wow, God, this guy's a scientist. He understands how the world functions. Yeah, they're almost like new priests. It's like a religion. Yeah, but most scientists is funded, and so they have to follow the research dollar. Yeah, the research money. So that I don't know when that happened. I don't know when that became so prevalent that science, because I think that a lot of scientists in historically, they were self-funded. Yeah, they funded their own research. I mean, like Nikola Tesla, he was not funded by a corporation. He was funding his own research, yeah? Is that true? I don't know.
I think there was some funding, but as soon as the ether energy became apparent that they wouldn't be able to, who was funding it wouldn't be able to capitalise and make money from the free wireless energy, then the funding got pulled and the lab got burned down.
So it's an area that I don't know enough about. But I think the only point that I was trying to make is that at some point science became corrupted, let's say, corrupted by money. Yeah.
So I'll make the leap to the scientists causing massive problems, the whole climate thing. I don't know where you stand on that, but the climate...
I think it's a hoax.
So climate science, which is now causing 15-minute cities, you're not allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You'll have it linked to your digital ID. Oh no, you've bought too much meat this month. You're going to have to eat locusts for...
Locusts?
Good one. And it's just like, hang on. So the scientists, trust the science, are literally heading us to this dystopian, technology-driven hell.
Yeah.
So all based on the science. Meanwhile, you've got...
and they're getting paid a lot of money for it. Is that what you're getting to?
It's just that's when you take it to the extreme. This is where we end up. We end up in these little boxes with virtual reality headsets on, and we've got to generate our own electric on a push bike. But meanwhile, you've got these politicians and A-list celebrities buying beachfront property because the sea level's not going up. So, I mean, I someone pointed that out to me about 15 years ago. And so because it was just starting. I mean, the whole you've got to be green. I remember it was the greenhouse gases when I was younger, and they were like, the ozone layer. That was it. It was the ozone layer. Yeah. And then it sort of gradually started ramping up and up and up. Mission creep, like what they do, which is why I won't go too much into it, which is why I think that there's some good stuff going on behind the scenes with what's going on in the world on a geopolitical.
But I hardly I hardly remember this. I mean, this is something that I had to talk to people that were older than me about. But there was a completely different narrative in the 50s, 60s and 70s. The main narrative during that time was that we were heading for an ice age. So that's the total opposite of global warming. That, you know, we were heading for a big freeze. It was coming. It was imminent. It was going to happen, you know, like if not in our lifetime, but in our kids' lifetime. You know, it was something that we were hurtling towards, and that it was man-made. Yeah, I don't remember anything about that at all, but apparently it was huge.
Right. And
it's kind of like almost been airbrushed out.
Yeah.
That was the topic.
Makes you wonder what the angle was at the time.
Yeah.
Like, what were they trying to get the population to do? Yeah, so that's interesting. Okay, so that's science. What was next? What's next?
Science.
On the list.
On my list. Well, I'm okay. Do you feel like you've said enough about this A432? And we haven't really we haven't really said what that whole thing is.
Okay, so I'll tell you my entire journey from start to finish with 432.
But can you say what it is first?
Okay, so
people listening to this can know what we're talking about.
Right. Concert pitch is.
So we're talking music.
Yeah. So concert pitch is it's the A above middle C on a piano, and the idea and the frequency in terms of how many vibrations per second of that A is 440 hertz. So it's 440 vibrations per second. That's the standard that all orchestras and most musicians in the Western world will tune to. So that if you have a jam with a bunch of, anyone that you bump into will be in the same tune to the same frequency.
Tuning, yeah.
Now, the theory, as far as I understand it, is that because that 440 wasn't fixed in the past. It was fluctuated between, what was it, 430 or
420 up to like 455, 460.
Right, and so it would depend on all sorts of things,
like who made the tuning fork, where it was made, and what they liked.
As the world became more connected, I guess, and for whether or not there's a conspiracy involved, there was a standard put in place. So rather than people tuning to their own instruments or tuning to their own ear, the standard was put in place to have one tuning fork which would vibrate at the 440.
And if I understood, the first attempt to do that was like in the mid to late 19th century, and then again 1939, but then the war broke out and then they reconvened and they did it in like the 1950s. So the final decision, as it were, was something in the 1950s to go for A440. And some countries didn't even do it. I mean, like I think Austria and maybe Switzerland and France, they all stayed at 435.
Now,
check that, because I might be wrong, but I think that some countries stayed at 435.
What, even to this day?
Yeah, I think so. I think that French orchestras, we'll have to check it.
Okay.
But yeah.
And anyway, when there is a community, I would say, of people, musicians that believe that having that A set to 432, which is slightly lower, it's a third of a semitone, something like 32, 38 cents, less than lower than the 440. That the notes on a piano. So it's not the actual 432 hertz tone specifically itself. That's important to note. It's the notes on a piano or on a standard equal temperament, using that reference point as 432, you'll end up. My understanding is that you'll end up hitting more notes that resonate with notes that exist in nature, with harmonics with frequencies that exist in nature. You mentioned about the Schumann resonance, which is 7.83 or something.
Yeah, the Schumann. 7.83.
But that even doesn't work, because 7.83, multiply that by whatever, you still don't get 432 exactly.
No, I did it. I did a thought experiment. I texted it to you. I think 55 and 56. If you multiply it by 55, or if you multiply it by 56, you get something like 431 and 439. Yeah.
So
very close to both of them. You know, it's almost exactly the same distance from A440 as it is from A432.
So when I became aware of this theory, I was just because it interested me, because I'm a musician.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pseudoscience around it. There's nothing really tangible that I can show anyone as to why it's beneficial. And I've bought a book by Leonard Horowitz, and he wrote a book called 528, The Miracle Tone.
Okay, 528.
528, yeah. So he's...
Is that linked to solfeggio? I can't remember what
it's one of the solfeggio tones, yeah. They call it the miracle tone. Yeah. And this book, a lot of it is to do with the number. And so straight away I'm like, because it's dependent upon how long a second is. So it turned me off massively, because you can tune your A to 444, which then means the C above was 528. And I've actually got a song that I'm doing at the moment.
Did you say 444?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you tune
the
the
A... just make...
Yeah.
Because I said it as a joke, but I didn't realise that it was actually linked to 528. But 444, half of that is 222. You add 222 to 444, you get 666. So that's kind of like the devil frequency, isn't it? Surely.
Again,
it's all linked to the devil.
But yeah, that's...
I'm being facetious, because the second people start talking about numbers and, you know, like resonant frequency of the planet and Gaia and the heartbeat I can kind of get to. Like, yeah, okay, if we've got a heartbeat, why doesn't the Earth have a heartbeat? But my heartbeat isn't the same as yours. And my heartbeat isn't the same as it was 10 years ago, and it's not the same as it is in the morning or when I've been for a walk or go running or something like that.
Yeah, so I'm looking for this information as well, because a lot of these the little Telegram videos that you get, and it says, oh, you know, this one removes feelings of guilt, and this one repairs DNA, and this... I'm like, okay, but
how?
Yeah, how? And it, because it's the proof? They just get reposted and forwarded and forwarded. And I'm like, all right, maybe, but I would like to know something tangible, just something a bit more than the first few pages of Google is repeating the same information. And then when there's nothing behind it, it makes me think, well, is this infiltration? Is this literally just rubbish data thrown at the spiritual or the truth community? Yeah, just to kind of like get us off the scent.
Yeah.
So
keep us occupied.
Where I'm at right now. I mean, what I did was I've put all the music that I've done recently, I've tuned to 432. And when I met Richard, I spoke to him about it, and everything I've done.
This is, you know, for me, this comes back to this idea of healthily skeptical. I'm not saying that my vision of A440 is right and yours is wrong. I'm just skeptical about it. I never really thought about it until a few months ago.
Yeah.
And actually, I've never talked to Richard about it. You're the only, let's say, rational person that I've spoken to about it. I've spoken to a few people who've been almost zealot religious about it. You know, like, we won't play with you unless you retune. Okay, calm down. No,
yeah,
fine. Okay, I'll retune. Yeah. You know, just so that we can play. You know, but it seems a little bit kind of like you're either with us or against us, and I'm cynical about that. Yeah.
So I'm leaning into it, and I want to see the reactions that I get, and I think the only way I'll really get a large sample, because I had a theory that I was going to test, which was to take these different solfeggio tones, because there's like 7/4/1 and an 8 something and a 9 something, and but they sound horrible together. They don't work together. So there's the one that removes guilt and fear, and the one that repairs your DNA, and all these unsubstantiated claims. But I was going to look into, and I've still got to do it because I've started a video series on YouTube about it. But the idea is...
I think I mentioned this to you before, that there's a woman, see if I can remember her name, Eileen Day McCusick, I think it's McCusick. And she's basically a woman that's written books about what she calls, and other people call, the biofield, which is an electromagnetic field around the body, and that she uses tuning forks to help people heal. And when I first heard about it, and actually the reason why I first listened to something that she written, because the audio books, I don't want to say I read her book, but I listened to her book, was because a friend of mine who's an acupuncturist in England, who I really respect, said, you should read this. I read it and I was really surprised. I thought it was going to be quackery. I thought it was going to be just, like unsubstantiated hokum. But this woman is, not only is she very open spiritually, but she's also very scientific. She's she's got this healthy balance, and she's not making any wild claims. She's just telling very clearly what her experience is, and she claims that she has helped people get better in their lives, improve their health, mental health, physical health, by using tuning forks. And actually her tuning forks, I didn't know this, I didn't make the link until I talked to you. Her tuning forks are tuned to the solfeggio, the sequence.
Yeah.
The sequence. And apparently she uses them over different chakras.
Yeah.
And she says that she doesn't like using the word chakra, but it's just a word that people understand, because she's talking about different energy points on the body. Yeah.
I've got to read that.
Yeah.
I've got to read that.
It's very, very interesting.
Because as part of our healing journey is, I mean, a year ago I would have been like, really? Because you really have to take ownership of issues, because your body is a messenger. Apparently, this is what my new understanding is, and my wife's way. She's reading lots of books about it, and we've been on some courses and some people that are a lot more connected with that world. Your emotional body and how it can manifest into a physical ailment is a thing, and that people the
link between health and emotions.
Yeah. So let's say you had some traumatic event that happened to you when you were younger.
You have to read Eileen Day McCusick. This is basically exactly where she's coming from.
And that if you can't process it at the time, your body can store it, and it can come out later or it can give you the message when you're older and more able to process it, or it will keep coming.
Yeah.
Even if you're not ready to process, but it gives you the message, like maybe you need to go back and look at that and revisit that trauma and try and release that, or take the lesson from it, or whatever. I'm no expert at this by any means, but a lot of it makes a lot of sense. And there's a Louis Hay, there's a book that Christine is reading at the moment, and the miraculous recoveries that people are having when they start to take ownership of something. Because you're not externalizing this issue. You say, okay, I've created it.
Yeah.
So I can fix it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's super interesting. So I mean, the idea that with the tuning fork, maybe it helps to release a blocked energy from a trauma that you have actually fixed now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. How to say this? I'm still reading. Mm-hmm. I'm listening to one of the books for the second time. The main reason that I'm listening to it is because of how it's making me rethink electromagnetism and this whole thing to do with frequencies. But from what I can remember, she's talking about how around us we have an electromagnetic field, and that she can literally use a tuning fork, I suppose, to amplify distortions in that field, and kind of like she uses the phrase drag and drop. She kind of like drags that distortion back to where it should be. And apparently the effects that it has on people are almost instantaneous and really profound. And that almost, if I understood it correctly, almost 100% of these distortions in the energy field come from trauma. You know, like trauma in a previous part of our lives. You know, something to do with our parents or our childhood, or this thing that happened or that event. So yeah, I mean, it all links to what you're saying.
Yeah. It's
And what I want to underscore here is that I don't understand it, and it's in the grey area, but it links with other things that I've read. I mean, it totally links with what Rupert Sheldrake, I don't even remember what he calls this, but he has coined a term that I think it's his term. I don't know whether he borrowed it from someone else, but it's a term that he uses a lot, which refers to this electromagnetic field. But he's talking about it in terms of memory. So there's this idea that our memories are in our brain somewhere, and no one's been able to find that place. And when they do think they've found, when scientists think that they found the place where memories are stored, they then find a person that's had that part of their brain destroyed by an accident, but they still got memories. So it kind of like cancels out the theory, you know, like that. If that's where the memories are stored, but that person doesn't have that part of the brain because it got, I don't know, the car crash and that area's gone. So anyway, I'm rabbiting a bit. What Rupert Sheldrake and other scientists have come up with is this idea that our memories are in a field around us and we tune into them. So if our memories are in a field around us, that would include all of the memories of trauma or, you know, past events or things that have happened to us. So it totally links and makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unprovably. But it makes sense, yeah.
It's see, all these new things that I'm leaning into and that resonate, they all coexist quite easily.
Yeah.
So the medical sovereignty, and going back and looking at aspects of your life that were difficult or traumatic, but you became the person you are today because of it, but there's still a lesson there to be learned, there's still something to be released. That ties in very nicely with the world as a school. And, you know, so I'm here to learn how to transmute that trauma, turn it into something positive. You know, the two don't negate each other. You know, so the picture that I'm building up now, I'm quite happy with.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because I'm as you can probably tell, I like learning stuff. I like learning new things, and there was a period about 2017.
Actually, Louis, I'm busting for a piss. Can you just hold that thought?
Yeah.
I don't want to turn anything off.
Yeah.
I'll edit this out.
Fix it in the mix.
I'll fix it in the mix. I'm just going to dash to the loop. I think there could be a market for some kind of weird product for podcasters where they can, like astronauts, that they can take a piss whilst they're actually talking. Some kind of horrible bag on your neck. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
shall I just dive?
Yeah, you dive straight
back in.
Yeah.
There was a time back in 2017-ish. As soon as I came over to Spain, actually, so that was what 2010.
Do you want to include, just because this question flashed into my head, a comparison of Andalusia and Britain? You know, what is the attraction? Why Andalusia and not Britain? I'm just incredibly interested in that because I see a lot of Brits over here.
I mean, the weather.
Yeah.
The weather's got to be the biggest.
Yeah.
Nature, although I'm really coming into that now.
Yeah.
The last few years, hikes has become something that we really, really like. Just outdoor living, getting sun. It's the price of stuff was generally maybe less so now. I don't know.
It's changed quite a lot.
Yeah, it used to be really, really cheap for like supermarket shops and stuff, and it wasn't ready meals everywhere. It was, you'd go to the supermarket and you buy your ingredients and you cook your food. Whereas England's a lot more, or Britain is a lot more convenience driven.
Yeah. I took you off track. Get back.
So, but no, where I am now, with regards to my view of the world and outside of the world, is a lot better than where I was. I was in a dark place in 2017. There was some information that came out, and it was very difficult information with regards to children, the amount of children that go missing, what happens to them, and I saw a lot of stuff that was very dark, and I had young children. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? This is... and I couldn't talk about it with anyone because as soon as I mentioned it, people were like, what are you talking about?
Spanish people? English people?
No, I mean, I didn't really talk... I didn't have too many Spanish friends at that point. But it was just people that I'd known all my life.
Yeah.
And some of the... I guess it's because it's just so hard to comprehend that could be a possibility. And I just felt helpless. Like, what can I do? And there's this stuff is happening like all around the world. And you find out that these charities that have been set up to go into the war-torn countries, and they're shipping humans out, and like the concept of human trafficking was like, what? That's a thing? So that was really dark. And even now, when I have come to terms with the fact that you need friction, you need the dark to have the light, at least in this dualistic polarity environment that we're in, that this school that we're in, if that's what it is, it's still hard to palate that stuff going on, and what these elites get up to in their rituals and how they harness certain power. It's dark. It's dark. So I did that in 2017-ish, and I had to come out of it. I had to step away from it. And it turns out that a lot of when
you said you had to step away from it, because it had an effect on you?
Yeah, I was miserable.
Yeah.
I was miserable, yeah, because I'm like, well, I'm genuinely worried about my children. And that this goes on in the world where, it's not everyone, it's not happening to everyone, and I guess because it's happening to such small numbers comparatively, and it's covered up by the media. And about what happened with Jimmy Savile. I mean, that took decades to come out, really.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know who Jimmy Savile is, just Google it and you'll get a shock. But I mean, I remember Jimmy Savile as being someone who was just this iconic English celebrity. He was like a DJ. He had his own television program. He was at OBE. Is that right? He was like
Knighted
the whole bit, and actually, I think someone did a documentary where they showed that many times during that time he actually publicly said what he was doing, but no one took it seriously. They just thought it was a joke, or he was saying something crazy. He was this crazy DJ, but he basically told people what he was doing publicly. And he was a notorious paedophile,
yeah, and just levels of depravity that is impossible for any normal human to even entertain that is a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
that's an incredibly interesting point that you just made, that any normal human being couldn't contemplate that being a thing. Okay. Do you what do you think about this kind of like the idea of every single human being has got their dark side, and it's not until you recognise that, you know, like the example that's often given of this is the guards in a concentration camp. Yeah. You could, not you, I'm not pointing at you specifically, but we could quite easily have been those people. There's no difference between a person perpetrating those crimes in a concentration camp and us. We can't say that we're better than them and they were worse than us. We have that capability. Every single person has that, and it's not really till you can acknowledge that about yourself and face it that you can do any real progress. Or that's the idea. That's the idea.
Yeah, this is getting into the real tricky parts of spirituality, isn't it? And that's why I'm really into the law of one.
I'm not sure that's even spirituality. I think that's more psychology. I mean, like he by all means not the only person that's talking about this, but one of the people that talks about it a lot, and that I've seen talk about it the most clearly, is Jordan Peterson. And so it's this idea that, and it's not his idea. This comes from like 19th century philosophy and psychologists, Jung, Freud, this idea that we have this intrinsic dark side. We're as good as we are bad, each one of us, each person. And it's not really until a person can acknowledge that we have that capability that you can make a conscious decision to steer away from it. Yeah, it's not that you fall into bad company and become a bad person. It's a decision. Yeah. So these people that you're talking about, people like Jimmy Savile, and maybe you were going to start talking about who's Harvey Weinstein. Who's this guy who apparently committed suicide? Who's
Epstein.
got Epstein? You know, all of these really horrible, depraved characters. At some point, they made a decision to go that way, and I would put forward, I think I definitely see this to be true, that at some point most people, they recognise that they've got that potential and they decide to go that way or not. Yeah. And I would say a spiritual path is an indication of someone who's decided not to go that way. That's a big, that's a big generalisation, but I would say that would be true.
One of the concepts that I'm learning at the moment is that there is a path. There's a service to self path, and there's a service to others path. And at the end of every 75,000 year cycle, was it the Kali Yuga or something? I think they're called. But that's the great cycle, and there's lots of smaller cycles that happen. We're approaching the end of the big one right now. And you've got some very, very polarized towards So like we'd call these the elite, the cabal. They're very polarized towards the service to self path, and they use anyone and anything to get for their personal gain. And that's all right. That's their path. They've gone that way. That's the service to self path, and they're doing it exemplary.
Yeah.
This isn't. I'm not saying it's cool. I'm not saying it's. I condone it or I approve. But that's how you get there. That's how you be really good at that.
They've mastered it.
Yeah. And they have this occult, esoteric knowledge that they hand down, and it's very secretive. That's why they've got the secret ceremonies and everything, because they've got this knowledge. Like, this is how we do it, and this is how we get to the next level, all right? And this is how we get these people to do what we want them to do, and we get all the money and whatever. And then on the other side, you've got service to others and very benevolent, caring people who will, very helpful and wouldn't dream of stitching up their neighbour for a buck. And they're polarised for the service to others. But in the middle, you've got this gigantic majority of the population who are neither here nor there. They're kind of in the middle. They're mostly good people, but they're doing what they're doing mainly because of money. I said earlier, people doing horrible things to each other for money. So they end up being, most of the time, service to others, but every now and again, service to self. Which means they end up in this
foggy,
sort of unpolarized. You haven't really chosen your path. And if at the end of this 75,000 year cycle, you haven't polarized, you should know by now.
Is this something recent for you?
Yeah. And but it's a theory that it's resonating with me a lot, because it kind of
I wouldn't call it a theory. I would call this what we were talking about earlier on. I would say that this is a story of cosmology. It's like the grand narrative is that, so you could say that spirituality is a person trying to figure out what the grand narrative is. What is the top level story that all the other stories come down from?
Right.
What makes sense of all of those other stories? So I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it just sounds. I think it's a very, very, very useful place to be. It sounds like you're searching for a cosmological story. You're searching for a grand narrative that makes sense of everything.
Yeah,
and I think that's what spirituality is. I think that there's many, many different. You could say there's a spiritual marketplace. It's almost like a fair. Like you go to a spiritual marketplace fair where there's all these people that have got their wares laid out on tables, and you can just stroll around and pick which one you want. Like, am I going to go with astrology and crystal healing and some new age thing, or some Hinduism or Christianity, or become a Muslim or become a Buddhist or whatever, or maybe mix them all up, which is probably a horrendous idea. But this sounds to me like something that you would find in a spiritual marketplace. But to take that first step into a spiritual marketplace, that I think is a sign of much, much more maturity than someone who wouldn't consider going in. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to find something that accommodates higher dimensional beings, interstellar travel, or I don't know. I'm even questioning the whole space thing, because I've seen so much bullshit about space. And like,
what, you think that space might not exist?
I'm not going to put myself out there and say, but I've seen a lot of BS underwater NASA videos with air bubbles floating up, where they've clearly been done in a swimming pool, and where they've messed up the augmented reality. And there's a guy on a NASA video, and he thinks he's grabbing something because he can see it in his glasses. He can see he's grabbing an orange or something, but the augmented reality's failed, and it's not there for the viewers. So he's grabbing this orange or something that he can see, and it's not on the main screen. There's so many.
The famous one is Neil Armstrong's "The Sole of His Boot."
Yeah,
that's the famous one, isn't it? Yeah.
But like you said earlier, there's so many. Like, is it plasma? Have we been there? Are there bases on the moon? There's so many narratives about it that it's just like, oh, well.
Is it hollow? Is it cheese?
So no, I'm trying to. Yeah, my grand. What is his grand narrative needs to accommodate all the stuff that I've found out the last few years.
Yeah.
And it needs to work. Why there is this what we could call evil, and why it exists and how can it exist, and if you've got a god, how can that happen with a god? Because I don't think that there's.
But can I just? Do you believe that there's a god? Is that part of your narrative?
Not in the man with the beard sense.
Yeah.
I'd say it's kind of.
It's a woman with a beard. Trans god, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Interchangeable with the universe, the everything, the source.
Yeah.
Much more than that, I can't quantify.
Yeah.
But the everything, the everything, just levels of intelligence that we can't even conceive in these limited existences.
But can I just? Okay, I just want to clarify something for myself. Okay, I can't prove to you that there are aliens. Like there are beings from another planet, and I can't prove to you that these beings from another planet or another dimension or another universe have set foot on Earth. Okay, but the idea that we're alone in the universe is preposterous to me. It's to me, it's just like I don't even have to give it one iota of my brain power. Of course, there are other beings. There must be. There must be, and probably there are other beings which are far more. I don't know about advanced than us, but they're the way that they process information and their technology is so different from ours that they're capable of doing things that we haven't even contemplated yet. Okay, so the chances that we've had extraterrestrial life on this planet are unbelievably high. Yeah, I don't need to. Me personally, I don't need to waste any kind of like brain power on that. I just think, I can't prove it. There's no scientific fact. That any video that I've seen that shows this could easily be CGI. We've seen what Hollywood can do. They can do absolutely amazing special effects. So no video is going to be proof. Yeah, but I just in my bones I believe it to be true. So I can't link that with my cosmological story. It doesn't fascinate me enough. It's just a given. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense of any sense of what you're saying.
But does that not? Does your grand narrative include a progression, like an evolution?
Wow. I'm not even sure that I could encapsulate my grand narrative into a few sentences. I think part of it is grounded in. Part of it's in a grey area. Part of it's grounded in what I know to be true, and part of it is speculation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what you're really talking about. I think the part that's in speculation is the bit that I find most fascinating, because, you know, just speculatively, you could say that maybe we're at a point where humankind, so what scientists have called Homo sapien, you know, because we're Homo sapiens, yeah, is at a point where it's going to develop into something else. We're at a crucial moment in evolution, if evolution is a thing. Maybe evolution is not a thing, but we're at a crucial point in evolution. It's like, where is it going to go? What direction are we going to go in? Are we going to become more silicon based, you know, like AI versions of humans, you know, like, is Elon Musk going to integrate some chip into us, and we're going to that's the direction we're going to go in for the future of humanity? Are we going to get wiped out? You know, like, if we're the sole colony of humans on planet Earth, and there isn't any more anywhere else, and Earth gets hit by a meteorite, then it's game over. You know, it's like the dinosaurs will become extinct. So again, maybe Elon Musk and other people have got the right idea that we need to get off the planet to be able to survive. I don't know. It's all speculation. It's fascinating. But I think that there's something to, for me, again, the speculative area is there's something to, let's say, psychedelics. I think that of all of the conspiracy theories that I've heard, the one that resonates the truest with me and that fits with my own experience the most is this idea that some governmental power or some global, I don't know, cabal of power-wielding people have tried to stop humanity going down the rabbit hole of psychedelics, because that seems to be it seems to be a pathway that could lead people towards better understanding themselves in terms of the cosmos, in terms of the universe, and also better understanding their health, their spirituality, how things function, not being afraid of death, all of this kind of thing. And it really, really seems as though some very, very powerful group of people have tried to put us off the scent. And I would say that it's not a new thing. I think that it's something that we were coming back to. I think that hundreds of years ago, human beings all around the planet, when we were much more tribal, when we were kind of like living in smaller groups, they were taking hallucinogenic plants, and that it was having a profound effect on the way that humanity was functioning. And then somehow that's been written out.
Yeah.
Especially, it's been written out of our history. We don't really have access to that information. And also the research that was having such a profound effect in the 50s and 60s has been squashed. It's been quashed. So for me, that seems, that's a speculative area for me. I think that people who want to use plant-based medicine, for want of a better word, you know, like ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, not recreationally, but to kind of like just have a clearer view of what's going on. That question, what's going on? I think that could be another part of the equation to, you know, like where humanity's going. And I think it also could be one of the main things that could kind of like overthrow this dark power, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of controlling us all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly has the potential to be a catalyst for not for everyone, because it's not for everyone. I mean, I've had some experience, and I know, but I know other people that have had way more profound, catalytic, would that be the word, experiences.
Yeah.
And it's completely changed because it lifts the veil, doesn't it?
But do you see what the question was? Grand narratives. I mean, part of my grand narrative is total speculation. I can't prove any of it to you. Like there's parts of it which I can actually put on the table and I can explain it all to you, and it'll be very, very clear, and it's concrete, solid. Mm-hmm. There's other parts of it which I still don't. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. And there are other parts of it which are that it makes sense, but I can't prove it to you. You know. For example, I think that if every teenager was allowed to do, this is absolutely preposterous thing that I'm about to say. It's ridiculous sounding, but I mean it genuinely. I think that if every teenager was allowed to do a huge psilocybin trip when they were, like 18 or 19 years old in a safe environment with really, really genuine, caring people around them to, keep everything safe. Yeah, so it's a safe environment. Mm-hmm. That would radically change that person's view of the world and would possibly have a knock-on effect for the rest of their life. And if every single person on this planet did that this week, we'd be living on a completely different planet by next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I can't prove it to you, it sounds like a total, crazy conspiracy, but I think that there are a very, very small group of people on this planet who know this and who want to prevent that from ever happening, because if they do, they'll totally lose control. It's about control. Yeah.
Have you heard the
I know that sounds preposterous, Louis, what I just said. I've got no proof for it at all, but that's the feeling I get. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you heard the theory that alcohol lowers your vibration, and that's one of the reasons why it's promoted and so glorified in society, that it actually closes you off, and in extreme circumstances allows you're so vibrating at such a low level that other entities can potentially come in and control.
I've heard things about this. Right. All of this is in the grey area for me. I mean, it's something that I can't get my head around. 1 minute I can, 1 minute I can't.
Because if you're saying that governments are stopping you from having these things that are elevating your consciousness, it's not crazy to think that on the flip side that they'd be promoting something that does the opposite.
Yeah. But again, my cynical mind just immediately jumps in and thinks, well, okay, listen, alcohol is something that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, this again, some historian is maybe going to listen to this and just say what I'm saying is completely wrong. But if I understood it properly, a lot of, like when we see Roman wine, it wasn't high alcoholic content. It's not as high alcoholic content as we have today. Mm-hmm. But they did have forms of alcohol. They had things like mead, like this alcohol from honey, and beer they definitely had. Again, that they're not sure of the alcohol content, but it probably wasn't as high as we have today. I'm not sure that those kind of like very, very natural beers and things like that would be bad for you. But, it doesn't make sense to me that they would be bad for you. But for sure, I don't know. I don't want to pick on a brand, but refined distilled vodka. Like not some pure Russian vodka, but some mass produced vodka. I'm sure that it's not good for you. I'm sure that it would never. There's no part of it that would give you a good your body a good response.
Or anything in a binge drinking session in the Wetherspoons on a Friday night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think if you had a nice beer made in Bavaria in a I know that in my hometown there used to be I think every town in England that used to have their local brewery, and you could go and get a local beer, and it would be something that was made by craftsmen, people who really, really knew what they were doing and liked what they were doing. And I cannot believe that would be something bad. I really, it just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, but I understand what you're saying. Like this kind of like the industrialized alcohol industry, for want of a better word. I think that what they churn out is something that's terrible for you. Yeah.
Right, what's next?
I think we've exhausted the list. No, actually, we haven't even touched it. You haven't told me anything about your music or your songwriting. We haven't said anything about decentralisation. I don't know if that's a thing. We can talk about that another day.
Yeah, that's quite a big topic.
This one thing I've got on here, we kind of touched on it. This idea that we're at war. It's something that you said in the conversation that we had, that we're already at war, and obviously my first question is, well, who with, and when, since when? Yeah, those are topics that interest me.
Okay,
but you maybe say something about your songwriting and your music.
Yeah, okay. So I started playing guitar when I was 13. My mum died actually just before I started. And I went to live with my aunt for a while, and my cousin played electric guitar. And so I started to learn how to play Wonderwall, in fact. It was on his electric guitar, so that was the first song I ever learned.
That's a great song.
Because it was easy on the electric.
Yeah.
I can imagine just trying to learn on a steel string acoustic, playing that. It was a difficult way to start. But no, I went reasonably heavy into it. I overtook a friend of mine who'd been playing sort of Spanish style guitar for a few years already, and I overtook him in a year or two. I was just really into it. I think that was where I needed to go. I just needed to be there at that time.
Were you playing in bands, or were you just playing on your own?
I did, because it was secondary school. I did have a band or two until like 17, 18, something like that, and I kind of took a hiatus. I took a break from playing a bit, but then I got back into it. And then I moved to Germany. I'd sold a house, and I wanted to go and make a record, and had these dreams of like music industry and
Whereabouts in Germany? Was it Berlin?
No, I was on the Swiss border, a place called Constance.
Okay, yeah, I know that.
And beautiful place. I was there for a year and a half. But I didn't follow through with my plan. I drank a lot, played a lot of pool, and it took me a while to get involved in the music scene. It was like local open mics and stuff like that, and I started to meet some people. But I was terrified. Absolutely, I used to feel sick before going up on stage with like really, really bad, like unbelievable nerves. And it's funny to think back at how nervous I used to be. And then kind of had an EP done. And funny, I look at some of the lyrics that I used to write that now are a lot more relevant, and at the time I didn't really, I wasn't massive. I was kind of a bit spiritual, but I didn't have any, my worldview was nothing like what it is now. And I read some of the lyrics, like there's a song I did recently called The Feeling, and the chorus is, I'm going to go somewhere outside of the world. I can fly, and the feeling is so good to me, it sets me free. Soaring beneath the clouds of heaven above, outside of time, and you'll see me when I put my feet back on the ground. And it was almost like astral projection. Now I think about it now, and this was something that I probably wrote when I was like 19 or 20 or something, and I didn't know what I was writing then. And now I look back, I think, wow, it's like this the concept of being able to leave your body and go somewhere outside of time, in a realm, in a higher dimension that doesn't have time as a constricting element. And there's quite a few of my old songs I'm like, oh man, I didn't realize what that was, and now it's taken on a new meaning now. And I kind of, I've always had this thing in the back of my head, you want to do the music, you want to do the music, you want to do the music, but life kind of got in the way, kids, and I did have the odd, I was in a couple of Beatles tribute bands, so I always kept on.
Which one were you?
I was George.
Okay.
I was George.
Yeah.
But I sometimes had to do different harmonies depending on the other guys in the band. If they couldn't get the high one, then I did the... So a lot of quick thinking on the fly. So it's always been with me, but just sometimes more than others. And we built a couple of houses, and that was a massive stress. But when COVID came again, it was a nudge, and I just felt like, oh, I've got this message I want to get out, so I did this song, "The Best Is Yet to Come," and at the end there's a dedication to the military, right? And this touches upon the war thing, because in my research that I've come up to do with this ancient cabal power structure, I think they're being...
We're fine. Yeah.
I think we're being... there's benevolent forces that are working to eradicate this power structure. Then they need us to do our work as well. We've got to wake up and start manifesting the world that we want to live in. But I think there's some heavy artillery going on in the background. And in the background, so that it doesn't cause...
Are you able, or do you want to be a bit more specific about that?
It's one of those hard-to-prove things, but I've got thousands of data points of... so, like, there's a YouTube channel called Monkey Works, and he does all the military... He tracks all the military planes. And the military plane activity going to Guantanamo Bay has gone through the roof.
Recently?
Yeah, last 3 years. Or even longer than that. It was like 2016. So when Donald Trump got in, and they never thought he would win. And there's a lot of people that say, oh, he's controlled opposition, whatever, he's just one of them. But I genuinely don't think that. Genuinely. And there's things like Operation Defender Europe. There was a massive mobilization of American military over to Europe and North Africa. So if you read and you look for the information, that it corroborates the theory. So there's a network of, I would say, benevolent, positive messages coming out on YouTube, and some of then they're talking about military action and some of the bad guys getting arrested, and this power structure being broken up, and it's a big thing. It's in every facet of society. And then when you look at, there's actually a lot of military activity going on around the world. There's the earthquakes that are happening at 10 kilometers underground. That's gone up by like 2,000%.
Someone showed me a seismic map of this a couple of weeks ago,
right,
around, I think it's Turkey, like the let's say the eastern shores of the Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. Huge amount of seismic activity. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's when it's at the 10K depth, it's a deep underground military base, a dump. The underground tunnels that are being blown up, that are said to be used by this cabal. All right. I've seen enough. I got to the point where I did enough research that I'd seen enough. The same thing happened with 9/11. I got to a point, okay, I've seen enough. For me, that's enough. But I can't just show someone and say, well, here's the proof. But when I talk to people and they say, yeah, it's this little Swiss village, and we've just got like 25 military vehicles have just gone through and then they've disappeared. And there's so many anomalies going on right now, and it's covert.
I remember. I mean, the one thing that sticks in my mind is that during this first lockdown. I was in Germany. I kind of got stranded there, and one of my friends was in Stuttgart.
Yeah.
And they sent some mobile phone footage that they had got from someone else that showed trains with tanks passing through Stuttgart main station, but nothing about it on the news anywhere. But they had this mobile phone footage, and then I have to follow through. It's a long time ago since this happened, but the thing was that the thing that was strange about it was that even though they'd seen it going through Stuttgart, and it had gone through Stuttgart's main station and gone out the other side, there was no trace of it anywhere else afterwards. There was no footage of it going through another town a few kilometres away, or across a like a level crossing or something like this. It was like seen for a few minutes, or like 20-minute period, and then disappeared again. So I remember, I do recall all of this stuff. Like there was huge conspiracy theories about all of this.
And you might also recall in Germany there were rivers massively overflowing, and there were children's bodies coming up and just out of nowhere, and it was. No,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of flooding going on, and it was unnatural. It wasn't just like rain.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my friend in Germany. I was like, "Yeah, but dude, what are these bodies being found? Like kids' bodies, like." So, which to me lines up with the underground bunkers and these places where people are being taken for whatever reason, are being destroyed, and most of the activity that's going on is happening underground, because that's where all the bad stuff's going on.
I have to say, I just have to put my hands up and say, I've never heard any of this before. This is totally new information to me. Yeah.
Because I don't think it's something that's helpful for the collective consciousness right now to know everything that's going on. I wanted to know, because I wanted to know, well, A, that something's being done about the thing that I found out in 2017, and I was in a very dark place, and I was fearful for my children. So it was good to know, oh, they're taking care of that underground. So that's what I mean when I say that we're at war. But there's also this psyops going on all over social media. Just so the idea.
When you say we're at war, you're saying that there's this. Okay, I was going to say cabal of Satanists and then mention Epstein, but some people say Epstein was a CIA agent. Like an implanted agent that was. Like an asset, not an agent.
Yeah, it could be. You've got double and triple agents.
Yeah. Okay, but you're talking about this satanic cabal of super powerful people, World Economic Forum types, and on the other hand, there's some very, very organised military group. Are you talking about an army from a country, or?
It's generally known as the Alliance.
Okay.
Also referred to as the White Hats. See, people like Kino, when I talk to Kino about it, he's like, no, I don't get it. It's just a diversion. He says
that?
Yeah. It's to get us to stop doing anything. But they're not putting it out there as much. You've got to go looking for it. So I don't buy that. It's just to keep us from doing anything. Yeah. In fact, I think everything at the moment is just to keep everyone, to wake people up. So we're getting fed up with our government, and we're realising that they don't have our best interests at heart. That's the narrative that I'm getting. And it's all so rapid. What do you mean 15-minute cities? Where's that come from? And what do you mean the vaccine out of nowhere? Where's that come from? Like everything's being rushed, and it's not the way the cabal works normally. They take ages to do their stuff. So it's either all been pushed forward, or it's narratives that's not really happening and people are waking up because of it.
So you're saying that the cabal's in a panic for some reason and trying to push its...
Yeah. It's either that they haven't got any teeth left and that these narratives are being introduced to us so we knew what was going to happen. That was what the plan was, or that they're in a panic and they're firing their last few bullets, but in a very chaotic, haphazard way, and they're not all working together because the bosses have been arrested. So they're just sort of floundering around, making lots of mistakes, and it's waking more people up in the process. Fits, and I've had this theory for quite some time, and every new bit of information that I get corroborates it, and it still works because I keep checking myself because I wanted to position our family where are we safe, where are we, how can we weather the storm, kind of thing. That was always my primary goal from the beginning when I started my research, was to protect my family. What can I do that's best for the kids and us, and that's where I found out all this military stuff. But yeah, so the sky scanning, all the military activity, all the plane activity, all the things like the Joe Biden that's not him. You can just check the earlobes from the old one to the new one. The inauguration was a film set. It was filmed on a different day. You can check the shadows. The times of day don't match the time of day they said it was. Like, so many things. I could, if I'd have started to write a book on it, on the millions of things that don't add up, but I didn't. But it's in here, and I've got my picture of the weird shit that went on over the last few years that points to massive covert military operation.
But where do you think that this is going? Do you think it's going towards, for want of a better phrase, Third World War, or is it?
No. If anything, there'll be a narrative to keep people at home because there's going to be a last wave of arrest or something like that. Maybe there's a narrative that's allowed to play out, or it's so that they get an emergency.
So where do you think is safe? You say, like your primary driver was to understand things so that you could keep your family safe. Where's safe?
Everywhere. I'm massively optimistic now.
Yeah.
Like hugely optimistic. Everyone needs to look after their square meter, and they need to look at themselves and deal with their traumas and manifest the life that they want. Yeah. It's that I don't recommend that everyone goes down conspiracy rabbit holes. This was my journey to get to where I am now, and I'm all about manifesting the good life.
Yeah.
That's where I am. I don't want to look at conspiracy stuff anymore. Okay, there's some shit that happened, and we've been in this controlled matrix style web of control, and but now we get out of it by manifesting the world that we want to live in. So we're doing our thing. The good guys are doing their thing wherever they're doing that. The military alliance, and it all ties in with a new financial system, which I think is coming. There's so many moving parts.
The financial system. What did you say about it? That it's what?
Well, the archaic old banking system, which I forget the name of the messaging system they use, but it's very old and it can take days for transfers, and it's 20, 30, 40 years overdue for being changed. The service to self group, should we call them, were looking for a total control digital central bank digital currency tied into your digital ID in a very kind of...
We could control your money.
Yeah.
We know where you live and where your money is.
Yeah.
And what you spend it on.
And it's just absolute control. But I don't think it's going that way. But it wouldn't surprise me.
So basically the technology already exists to make that happen, and in some countries it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though it might look like it's going that way, I don't think that that's the way it's going.
Yeah.
I've always got my mind 100% on this is going to have a good outcome. Mm-hmm. But we are at war because there are factions that want that total control, but the majority of humanity wants freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Louis, that maybe we should wrap this up and come back another day and have another conversation.
Yeah.
It's been great fun. I enjoyed talking to you. Honestly, what I really, really like, because I'm only getting to know you now, bit by bit, but what I really like about the way that you present yourself and the information that you're presenting is you're very humble. You're very humble indeed, and I think that is a fantastic quality, because you haven't kind of like preached a doctrine. Mm-hmm. You've been very, very clear that like you're just trying to figure it out, and that's really helpful. I think, yeah, really, really helpful to see someone really openly and honestly trying to figure things out. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Cheers.